concrete roller. We were rolling out our own pitch.
Used to do underarms and hit balls on the field.
I've hit some stumps that I've made out of toilet paper rolls.
Playing cricket at all times of the day until you couldn't see the ball anymore. Mostly spent bowling because my brother wouldn't let me bat.
When you asked what do you want to do when you grow up, my first answer was always I want to play cricket for New Zealand.
Always loved watching Nathan Astley.
2000 was one of the first times I ever saw other female cricketers on the TV.
It's unrecognisable.
It's just been massive.
Absolute stunning.
We hold such esteem around world cricket at the moment.
The young guys coming through.
It's just going to be exciting to get out there.
Every season it just gets better and better.
New Zealand cricket is in a great place.
We're just getting started.
One, two, three. Welcome once again, everyone, to the culmination of this T20 International Series between the West Indies and New Zealand, the Bay Oval, the venue. But the news isn't great. We've had the toss, we've had all the formalities, but the rains have started showing itself once again here at this wonderful venue. It's been that sort of day, to be honest, from I suppose early in the morning. The rains have come down. There was a break in the inclement weather where we got the toss and everything going, but now the heavens have opened up again. Disappointingly so. Heavy grey skies. Some of the patrons have already packed in because it's the third and final game. New Zealand have an unassailable 2-0 lead, but there's still so much to play for both teams, with a T20 World Cup hopefully a year away. So teams will want to find out whether Brandon King and Hayden Walsh and those players are good enough New Zealand, with a new captain today, will also be hoping to dot some I's and cross some T's. Teams for today will be led by Mitchell Santner, and of course with a few more guys who've already left for test duty. Daryl Mitchell comes in to the 11 today if they get on the park, and Hamish Bennett is back in for the West Indies. A couple of changes for them. Hayden Walsh Jr. replaces Shimron Hetmeyer, who has concussion issues, and Romario Shepherd, the seamer, replaces Kimo Paul. New Zealand have won the toss and elected to field Brendan McCullum and Jeetan Patel alongside me. Brendan, I'll start with you just to give me some insight first into Mitchell Santner leading the team today and what New Zealand would be hoping to get out of this.
Yeah, good evening, Bish. Good evening, Jeets, and good evening, everyone back home. Very exciting day for Mitchell Santner. He's the 8th T20 captain to represent New Zealand. Once they finally get out on the ground, that is. Look, he's a guy whose emergence and development within this New Zealand cricket side has been quite swift in the last 12 months or so. I think in this form of the game, he is considered a world-class player, not just in New Zealand, but around the world. I think he's a very considered man. I think he's got his finger on the pulse in regards to tactics throughout T20 cricket, and he's respected by his peers. So I'm really excited about how he goes with the captain's armband on. I'm sure he is very proud to have that honour of leading New Zealand this evening.
Jeets, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm excited for Mitch Santner. I think it's a great opportunity here for him, just like Brendan's alluded to, but it'll be interesting to see how he uses himself as a bowler. He's quite an important bowler in that lineup. It's different when you're, I suppose, that spinning captain. How do you fill yourself in? But you look at the other guys coming in also. Scott Kugelheim gets another opportunity after having a successful Caribbean Premier League, and obviously Hamish Bennett, from what happened at Eden Park, I think he'd be quite keen to resurrect himself and show exactly what skills he's got going out there. Bowling first is certainly a different option, considering the 7 games that have played here have been won by the team batting first, but I think that's purely just down to the weather. And as batting units, as teams go, they tend to want to take that option to bat second because it's an easier way to manipulate how you get that score, that final score that you need. But look, they're all looking like they're getting ready now, and the covers have come off and the stumps are going back in. So hopefully we get underway at some point, Bish. And I'm looking forward to seeing what some of the new West Indian boys have got as well.
And I think that's the important thing for me. A lot of people may say series gone, but that T20 World Cup and questions to be answered by those replacement players today who've played before. Romario Shepherd has played before. Hayden Walsh Jr., the leg spinner, has played before, but neither have solidified a position in addition to the Brandon Kings of this world. So I'm guessing for New Zealand as well, it's just as much. Series 1, yes, but hey, a lot of questions still in some areas.
Here we go. We welcome the on-field umpires, Wayne Knights and Sean Haig.
Umpires making their way to the middle, so that's a good thing with these overhead conditions. The correct decision, Baz?
Well, I think it is, Bish, even though statistically it's completely the wrong decision, but it's very, very difficult to win the toss here and bat under these kind of grey skies, one would think. From New Zealand's point of view, Gary Stead alluded to the fact that they wanted to improve their ability to chase. And in a World Cup year, just 12 months away, and with the fresh crop of players, they'll get that opportunity tonight.
With that, Brendan, does that take away the opportunity to continue to win? And how important is winning games of cricket time and time again?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, winning is paramount. I think what they're looking at this evening is that the skies are very grey, and we know that the Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method favours the team in this T20 format that is chasing on most occasions. Didn't yesterday for the West Indies after Kyron Pollard won the toss and batted. the weather cleared and New Zealand were simply too dominant. But there is rain imminent. Andre Fletcher, he's looked good so far in his couple of games here in New Zealand. He's yet to get that big score, but he is a quality player. Brandon King, seen him firsthand at the CPL, and he's a prolific batsman once he finds form, but he is searching for form at the moment, and his opportunity is upon him. He has one last chance in this form of the game. New Zealand Shores to make a statement.
First game is captain. Captain says, I'll have the first ball. Two right-handed batsmen at the crease, and we often see these types of matchups depending on the nature of the batsmen. Getting there. And as the players have done all series, the formalities, recognition of those who are fighting the cause of social justice around the world. Commendable. Players and management, that was great to see. Now, down to business, folks. This is no bly being given. There's a game to win for country and region. Santner. And wide straight away. Is this expected, gentlemen, that Mitch would certainly start here?
No, I'm not sure. I think it's purely just to change it up. You know, the West Indian openers have had to face seam straight up, and whether it's worked or not is arguable. But Santner's come in and maybe trying to get one of his overs out of the way early with Sodhi bowling in the middle as well.
Lovely Mitchie, lovely Mitchie.
I think the other thing as well is that with New Zealand now playing Ish Sodhi in the lineup too, they have two spinners, and they've Kuggelein, Ferguson and Bennett as their seam bowling options. They try and utilise some spin early. Otherwise it could be very difficult to try and get both spinners into the game through the middle stages of this contest. Try and split the spinners up a little bit.
Lovely Mitchie, lovely Mitchie.
Long on and deep mid-wicket in place. Just to remind you of the two fielders allowed outside the circle in the first 6 overs. Coming in right of your screen.
Lovely boy, lovely.
Left home early there, Brandon King.
Lovely boys.
Yeah, with the newer ball and the greasy nature that's just been produced with a little bit of rain, you can expect the ball to slide towards the leg stump, and it's understandable in some ways how it's gone down the leg side a couple of times.
Nice strike.
Come on there, Mitchie boy.
Big strike.
Keep going, Mitchie boy. Keep going, Mitchie.
From Brandon King.
He showed his hand, the ball before. On this occasion, he does the same thing. He comes down the wicket, dances down the track. There's no spin with this new ball on the greasy surface. He goes high and he goes long over, long off.
Oh, lovely. Lovely Mitchie.
Two's a call, but just one.
Lovely lock. Daz. Lovely lads, lovely lads.
End of the first over. Without loss for the West Indies. That man, Lockie Ferguson. There was one interesting matchup that just, and the matchup is just giving information and options. Scott Kugelheim, Brandon King, because 3 times Kugelheim has played against Brandon King in the CPL back in the Caribbean, and he's gotten him all three times. 2 league matches and 1 playoff match. Now, I'm not saying that has to be, it's obviously not the way. Brandon has his issues and challenges as Scotty Kugelheim. It's Lockie Ferguson who he's going to be challenged with. That has flown.
Yeah, Lockie comes in to try and take that wicket straight up front, doesn't he? He's had success quite recently against this whole West Indies unit, and straight away grains a nick. Just maybe a bit slow with that feet movement early, gets the hands through a touch too early. Hell of an effort from Daryl Mitchell, but it flies away through for 4.
Third man is very wide, considering the pace of Lockie Ferguson. Left of your screen. Straight to him. Straight to him. Well, that's obviously a plan. I think it's the 2nd time in this series Brandon King has been caught down there at wide third man. First game in Auckland as well.
Beautifully picked out by Ian Bishop and beautifully executed by Lockie Ferguson. The wider angle of Ferguson means that the ball is going to go a touch wider than the normal third man position. Slides off the outside edge, and a simple catch down there for Jimmy Neesham. Lockie Ferguson with the new ball today, effective with the old one so far in the series, and effective again today with the new one. He strikes first for New Zealand. It's Brandon King who's gone for 11. West Indies 16 for 1.
Kalmeers at 3. It's an interesting over. It really is. First ball 4, leg stump, short fine leg from Lockie.
This one doesn't swing. He goes for the miracle ball this time, Lockie Ferguson. He's entitled to too, with the series that he's having. Doesn't swing, too straight, clipped nicely. That'll feel good for Mayers. I'm interested to know what Ian Bishop has as his next field that he's going to point out, so we can keep an eye out for the next dismissal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Tim Southey in the first game up at Auckland. In the first game where King went down to a very similar position. And this is here this evening or tonight. good hands for Jimmy Neesham. And this is what I find, Brendan, you've been out in the Caribbean with us for a number of years. The matchups with so many of these players on either side having played against each other. Phillips, Jimmy Neesham's been out there, Mitchell Santner. A lot of swapping of intel. That is flown as well. Unfortunate for Lockie Ferguson. He's causing errors.
He just creates uncertainty because of the extra pace. He's hitting good lengths as well. Genuine inside edge. Good dive from Seifert, but the ball swings a little bit after as well. Beats the outstretched glove of Seifert. Fletcher will gleefully take the boundary. Gee, Ferguson is dangerous again. Makes things happen.
Carry. 25 for 1. Rain just sprinkling here at the moment, and these die-hard supporters have come out once again in these weather conditions.
Yeah, Bish, I live just over the Kaimais, actually, in a place called Matamata, and I drove over this evening, and it was a little bit murky at the top of the Kaimais. Hopefully it disappears.
And sad news, Jeetan and Brendan, for New Zealand cricket. I mean, unfortunately, the black armbands are being worn.
Yeah, sad day. It's been a tough year, that's for sure, 2020, and it's a loss of one of New Zealand cricket's great men, a friend to many. Been through a period of illness recently, but a man who has been across everything in New Zealand cricket. Got the Otago cricket tie on there, where he was CEO of Otago cricket for a number of years and made a ginormous impact at the bottom of New Zealand selector. Auckland wicketkeeper, a mentor to many. Tremendous man who I was fortunate enough to have a lot to do with my time down in Otago, and also first few years in New Zealand side. And he was a man who he always made you feel welcome in his company. He always made you feel as if the game was meant to be a game. It was meant to be enjoyed for what it was. He just had a tremendous impact, and he's going to be a sad, sad loss. Survived by Sue and the family, and our thoughts and condolences are to them. May you rest in peace, Ross Dykes.
It's sad when anyone leaves the face of the earth, and the sad news here is of a different kind, much lighter kind, because the rains have come in, the players are making their way off. Jeetan, and as we had at Eden Park, we had these interruptions, I think, after 4 deliveries, then after 2 overs. How difficult and challenging is this for the players?
Oh, it's ridiculously challenging. You know, the conditions change so quickly, right from how the pitch plays to how the outfield plays. The ball is different. As a batter, your mindset has to change quite quickly to, do I start again, or we've just lost a wicket, do I have to rebuild, or can I just kick on from where I was? It's probably a good chance for the bowling unit to get inside, assess what the ball's doing, what the wicket is doing, and make the adjustments early. And I think that's where it probably helps the bowling unit, as it does more so than the batting unit. You know, yes, you can share that information, but that rain looks pretty heavy, and you just wonder how long they're going to be off the park for. I know this ground drains exceptionally well, and you know, I'm not sure if it's the grass or the drainage itself, but it does allow teams to get back out there very quickly. But right now it looks very thick, and it looks like it's going to be a decent break.
This is your part of the world, Brendan. You're responsible for this. You and Kane Williamson and one or two others, Colin the Grand Home. All of you exceptional young men have homes down this part of the world.
Well, I've only just recently come to this part of New Zealand, to the Waikato, originally from down south, Bish. A little bit colder down there. But it's a big farming community around here. And farmers never begrudge rain, Bish. They'll be very pleased to see a little bit of rain. Not so good for cricket. Good thing is that it's not too cold out there, so the crowd that has turned up this evening will hopefully still be reasonably comfortable sitting on the embankment. Maybe nip over the back and pick up a hot dog if they can beat Craig McMillan to the stand. Maybe a nice warm coffee. Sit back in anticipation of what we have to unfold for the rest of the evening.
Just looked at the teams while we wait news of what will happen and how long the players may be off for. Just going over this series, there are a lot of things New Zealand would have taken out of it. The West Indies with Pollard's knock in the first game, but I've been really disappointed in the bowling of the West Indies, really disappointed with some of the disciplines. Just have to say that. So again, you guys know a lot of these players and the packages that they bring with the armory of the bowling and what's required in this format of the game.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I know coaches and captain Corin Pollard were disappointed with the attitude that they had. In yesterday's game in particular, they felt that they had been knocked early with the way that New Zealand played, and they weren't ever able to try and wrestle any of the control back. But you've got to find a way. It's not just good enough to say that you got hit early and you weren't able to come back into the game. You've got to find a way, just as New Zealand did in the first game after they were under immense pressure. And there's no real excuse for it either, I think, Bish, because you look at the West Indies side, and whilst they're missing many stars, there's still some experience and some T20 international experience and some competition experience, IPL experience, CPL experience. So they've really got to improve somehow. It's never easy touring, but you've got to find that bit between your teeth to be able to get the job done.
Yeah, it's...
We get Jeet's thoughts not too long from now to finish. I think that's important, those points that you're going to bring. But for now, we'll take a short break and we'll be back with more. Hopefully this rain will dissipate.
The last few months have been very difficult given the uncertainties that COVID presented to us. The ANZ Cricket Ground was vital to our planning for the new season. ANZ have supported us with new shirts for our junior members.
I like my new kit a lot. It has colour in it. The t-shirt is so much better than the old one, but this makes you stand out. Yes!
ANZ, really we see them at grassroots, helping the people that will be our cricketers in the future.
1, 2, 3, hooray!
Quite commendable from the corporate sector, and this time it's ANZ, because we know that throughout the world COVID has had such a significant impact, a negative impact really, and to commit $1 million to help grassroots cricket and netball, to get sporting clubs a continuity through a very difficult time. Over 200 clubs have received help here in New Zealand through those grants from ANZ. And that's how their support has made a difference. And I can tell you it's a global thing. It's a global phenomenon. Businesses, sporting clubs, revenue streams have dried up and dissipated. We'd love the rain to dry up and dissipate here as well, because the West Indies have been asked to bat first and have progressed to 25 for 1. And the rains came in. We're hoping that it'll go away as quickly as it came. These crowds will stay here for a while. Jeetan Patel, you were sharing your thoughts before this little break, please.
Yeah, Bish, we were talking about where the West Indian bowlers may have missed, really, and may have not got it quite right. And unfortunately, I feel, without being too harsh, it's been everywhere. I think the execution hasn't been as good as you'd expect from a side who's played a lot of cricket recently. The Caribbean Premier League's been on, so they've had cricket leading into this, especially 2020 cricket, the IPL, and a lot of their players have been there as well. It's just missing that spark, that real honing in of Yorkers at the right time, the bounces at the right height. We've seen full tosses, wides, no balls. We've seen, you know, balls at step and slog sort of length, and in terms of that fuller length. It's just been a bit mixed, and for me it's a bit of a shame. And New Zealand were the same in the first game at Eden Park also, and maybe that's just the rust coming out of red ball cricket they've just been playing. And you know, last night New Zealand were a lot better again, but it's part of their progression for every team, and leading into a World Cup, that teams need to start forming these relationships amongst bowling units, amongst captains, so fielders know exactly what to do and when, and it starts now. It starts 12 months out.
Thanks, Jeet. That's wholeheartedly share your thoughts on that. And you mentioned yesterday's game. Let's reflect and have a look at how that turned out.
No, I couldn't think of a better place for Game 2 of the KFC T20 series between the West Indies and New Zealand than the Mount.
New Zealand with Guptill and Seifert at the top. Conway was very good last game. Phillips has recovered from that little injury he had where his kneecap, we're told, slipped out of place. And the excellence of Neesham and Satner. One change with Ish Sodhi coming in for Bennett for the West Indies. Brandon King, Fletcher Hetmeyer, etc. But Kyle Mayers on debut, replacing Kesrick Williams. New Zealand one up in this series.
Also, let's put our hands together and welcome.
It is the short boundary that Guptill goes to on this occasion. Bish slides it off the face of the bat. Cottrell, the ball doesn't swing for him. Just gets it up and over that backward point region, access that short boundary. New Zealand are underway.
Could run away for 4. It is the second boundary of the contest. Dropped it, Pollard, usually an excellent fielder. Barely laid a paw on it. Such a good shot. In full control of it. That's where Guptill is so strong, and we've seen it over the years. Down the ground for 6.
Backs himself to hit it clean, and clean he does. That is Martin Guptill at his best. Head down, long swing.
That has flown away for 4 as well, so an expensive introduction. 15 off the over, 41 without loss. There's no one down at third man. That is a very, very clever shot. Goodness gracious. I don't know whether that's the pace of Thomas, the timing of Guptill, or both, and the wind. Played it onto his stumps. The West Indies needed that. Trying to scoop it down to fine leg, and Thomas strikes.
One.
There's something in tennis called an unforced error. That is one of them in cricketing parlance.
Satisfied the ball's been hit. Go back to the on-field umpire, Sean. I'll get you to change your decision from not out to out. You're on screen now.
Well, there it is, confirmation. Martin Guptill has got to make his way back to the changing room here at the Bay Oval. An outstanding start for Guptill, 34 off 23 deliveries.
Solid, not totally out of the middle, but the placement was good. Shoveled away on the onside and shoveled away brilliantly, shoveled away the whole way. Wow, and he goes in the air. And a long way in the air, it doesn't matter where they are out there, he backs himself to go over. Offside now, through the gap, hit like a rocket. Square again, in the gap again, 4 more again. 100 up now for New Zealand. Now he takes the opportunity to go straight. It's high and it's long. Free hit. Not timed, but doesn't matter. That's just clubbed away. Too much width. Stand and swing the hands through it. 6 more. 50 of just 22. Took a few balls to get started and then bang, crash, wallop. Look at that strike rate.
Difficult conditions out in the middle, but his striking has been clean. He's just realised it wasn't quite zoned in that he'd reached 50. And now he shakes hands and salutes his teammates in the crowd. Nice innings this.
Well, if ever you want an illustration of how quickly someone's accelerated their innings, it'll be the lack of realisation of what score they're on. Straight again. It's 6 more.
You give me a free hit, I'm going to hit you over long on for 6. Bowl it wide, I'm going to hit you over cover. This time, I'm just going to hit you for a nice, clean little 77 metres 6 over your head.
Oh, there we go. There we go. This one's just 1 bounce. 13 overs gone. What an over for New Zealand. 24 from it. 137 for 2.
Yeah.
Oh, he's timed that. Despairing effort, but can't stop it. Phillips is fine in the middle of the bat. There he goes. He loves shimming down the wicket, looking for width, and that's just glued off the bat for 6.
Very deep in his crease. Down towards long on, and perhaps, yes, over long on. The runs continue to flow like a river. And slashes for 4. Pollard's down there. And Pollard takes it. They're looking at the umpire. Phillips is looking.
Yeah, I'm satisfied that's clearly above the waist. Go back to the on-field umpire, Sean. Say no ball and free hit.
Goes high into the air, but I think he's got too much on that. Yes, he has. That is a thing of beauty. It truly is an outstanding shot of real elegance and class.
Just remind you, ladies and gentlemen, second is game. It is his second game on this occasion. He goes high into the air over cow corner.
And he clears the man into the wind, and he takes another 6.
That's gone for 6 again. We're having some big overs. That'll be 50 for Devon Conway. His first in T20 internationals, and it's come at a magnificent pace in the last 10 deliveries or so. Tremendous. That is the big side of the ground. Remember that, and yes, the wind is blowing in that direction. But he looks an outstanding touch player, Devon Conway. Real chance to have the fastest T20 international 100 for New Zealand.
Yeah!
It's been a roar. The first T20 international 100 for Glenn Phillips. Fastest by a New Zealander. Great knock.
In a year that has challenged so much, so many opportunities have been few and far between. The opportunity for Glenn Phillips has arrived, and wow, has he taken it. What a statement has he made late in the year. The summer is just beginning, but he has kicked it off.
On the banks, into the crowd. And it's raining 6s, 228 for 2. Oh, he's down. He is down.
No, I can't.
That kneecap has probably slipped out of place once again.
Cool.
Mark Richardson alluded to every 8 years, but it's come a little bit sooner.
We're good.
Tommy
Just went again.
is onto the field once again. This should be the end of him. It is the end of a fantastic innings by Glenn Phillips, 23 years of age, but has given great pleasure to these fans here and across the globe.
It was Guptill and Seifert that started for New Zealand. Guptill particularly looked in good order. Was a little bit unlucky getting strangled down the leg side just after Seifert had departed. And then Devon Conway and Glenn Phillips set about what was quite the extraordinary partnership. Elegance from one end and absolute brute power and strength from the other. Superb innings from both. A little bit of everything from the West Indies captain. The use of 7 bowlers. He chopped and he changed. He tried to rotate. They could never quite find what was needed for today. Relatively expensive across the board.
It will have to be the second highest run chase in T20s if the West Indies are to get it. Tim Southee, Lockie Ferguson have something significant to defend.
There you go. Fletcher's underway in sparkling form.
Yeah, just too full. Again, it didn't swing on this occasion for Southee. Fletcher was sitting deep. He was waiting for it.
Got him. Swing. Don't worry about the bounce. You get it full and straight and you swing it in. You've always got a chance.
The perfect start for Jameson. Absolutely brilliant. Full straight. As Mark Richardson alluded to, it did swing.
Bang! There goes Fletcher again. Wow, that's a biggie.
And he goes wide. And he offers width. And Shimron Hetmeyer says, thank you very much. I will take that. I will take my boundary. We will skip along to 26 for 1.
Oh, Bobby. Yeah! Out! Gotta be out! Got to be out! Whose day is it? Whose day is it today? It's Tim Seifert's and Glenn Phillips as well. Oh, what's that come off? Helmet? Glove? It's an inquiry. Not out's the call.
Oh, that has got him flush. That is 151 kilometres an hour.
Straight. This one he has hit. This one will go all the way.
Continues to hit him straight though. It takes that risk out of play. This is really, really good batting.
Oh, how's he hit that? Hit it high on the bat, and it's rocketed away.
That is tremendous. That is outstanding. Glenn Phillips can do no wrong here at the Bay Oval. Not today anyway.
Wow, how good is this?
Catch!
Sees it as a matchup and smashes it.
A real challenge for Satner here. Puran, who's just come to the crease. Hoisted in the air. Puran tries to do it again. This time, top edge and out. Well bowled, Mitchell Satner.
Gave him the width, and previously it was what Surrey was trying to maybe avoid, just going wide of the off stump. But Pollard has long range. Magnificent from Kieron Pollard.
Now we're seeing Pollard at his best. He's putting some pressure back on the New Zealand bowlers. Santner went wide outside off stump and went for 6, so I'll follow him. I'll go straighter. That's the result.
But it can't stop that. Told you he picks his bowling. He doesn't just go blindly. I'm not saying it's going to work here, but you can see at least a template of what he tries. Southey has it. He has it. Definitely has it, and that's why he placed himself into that unique position behind the bowler.
Well, there was only 3 on the leg side, 3 players on the leg side. We had 6 on the offside. Southey placed himself almost directly behind Mitchell Satner.
That is very good. It really is very good. Santner taking the catch, and that's been one of the differences between New Zealand today and the West Indies, the fielding.
Up and over, up and over. Oh, Ferguson got a hand, it's gone for 6. He came in, he had to go back. He wasn't sure, the sun in his eyes. I think it might have gone for 6 in the end. That's 4, look at the timing. That's just classical back cut for 4. Lovely shot, Rodman Powell. Knocked him over! Ferguson in the wickets. That's a beauty, Powell on his way. Off stump's been rocked, and the Kiwi speedster has his first.
Lockie Ferguson, brilliant again. He continues to challenge the stumps, and that is the mark of him as a bowler. The last couple of years, he has pitched the ball full with good pace, and he's asked a question.
In the air, guess who's under it? Phillips is in play again, takes another catch. That was the easiest one he's had today. 99 required. Oh, what a catch it is from Seifert. It's off the helmet, off the grill. No glove there, but athletic piece of keeping, and Southey says, let's have a look upstairs, we might as well.
Flat line, flat line, flat line, all the way through. Thank you. With a flat line, there's no spike. I'll get you to stay with the original not out decision. And you're on screen now.
That's about as close as it gets.
With diving, looking to catch the ball slightly behind me, so when I do finish my dive that I'm rolling on my shoulder instead of catching the ball in front of me and diving onto my pit, so that's a little bit behind me and I can be able to roll.
Beautiful, executed wonderfully, well done.
Oh, he's in the action to Seifert. He's got McCullum in one ear and he's still good enough to sprint 20 metres and take a catch. With a big smile on the face. Kima Paul. Oh, what a way that would have been to finish this match off. Satner's put it down. He did everything right. Made good ground to get there, put the dive in. Oh, he's going to have another chance, is he, this time? No, it's 6. He's hit it flat and hard. You can hear Tim Southey in the background. He's not impressed. Oh, that sounded good. That sounded really good. That's gone a long way back. Wow. Crack off the bat. And all of a sudden, Southey's over's gone for 14. Oh, that's good. That's good. Down breeze, don't worry about that. There's enough power in that to go for 6. Flat and hard for 1. And that is the end of the West Indies 20 overs. They finished 166 for 9. And a comfortable win by New Zealand, 72 runs. That man, Glenn Phillips, the star of the day. But that also means that New Zealand win the series. Their second win in this 3-match T20 series. Very comprehensive display from New Zealand. West Indies, a few things to work on. They haven't got a lot of time as we come back here tomorrow. But the fans have been entertained by both sides here today. So the West Indies batting card. A lot of starts, a lot of scores in the 20s from Fletcher, Hetmeyer, Mayers, Pollard as well. Kemar pulled 26 not out, but nothing of real substance like New Zealand innings had. They were right up against it. They'll probably feel that New Zealand scored an extra 20 or 30 runs than what they should have and put it out of reach. So they'll be disappointed with how today's gone. New Zealand bowlers very good. Jameson 2 for 15. Ferguson outstanding again, 1 for 22. They're a little bit on the expensive side, but picked up 2 key wickets and a wicket each for Ish Sodhi and James Neesham. Standouts really at the top there. Phillips 108 from 51. That's New Zealand's fastest T20 series. 100. Came off 46 deliveries. Well, 65 from 38. Good start set by Guptill and Seifert, and then Phillips and Conway put the icing on the cake.
Well, you're back live now at Bay Oval in Mount Maunganui, where the covers, the big covers, the large tarpaulin covers are unfortunately still on the pitch. It's just raining ever so lightly, but the issue you've got is when you leave the park, you need the rain to pretty much stop completely before you can go back on. I'd say if the players were still out there, they'd still be playing in these conditions. However, the rain did get way too heavy. It's a very, very good drying ground, and nowadays they like to get the players out there playing as soon as they possibly can, so they won't be too precious about the whole thing. But at the moment, no play, unless you're a seagull. I don't know what sort of play that was. So a really good opportunity now to utilize Inside Edge app on, well, the Inside Edge on the Spark Sport app. And Grant Elliott, you're our app man, aren't you? This is your opportunity at home to send in your questions and ask us so-called experts. Some of us think we're a bit more expert than the others, not looking at anyone in particular. And just, yeah, see what we have to say and answer your questions. So take it away then, Grant.
Well, I've got to take the lead here, and I've got my experts, and I've been very active on this app. So it's insideedge.sparksport.co.nz, and keep those questions coming. Love the questions. The first one here for you, Jeets. Good luck. Matthew from Wellington. He says, does Ish Sodhi play Test cricket this summer?
First of all, good evening, Matthew from Wellington. What a spot to be living in. You know what? I don't think he does. I don't think he does this summer, Matthew. Unfortunately, they're probably going to stick with someone. You know, this sounds harsh to Ish, but someone they're probably going to trust a little bit more with controlling run rates. New Zealand tend to play Test cricket on greener wickets, which promote the seamers initially and the spinners role, especially in that first innings, which is a big setup part of the game. to control the run rate, to rest the seamers so that they can come back with more energy throughout their spells and hopefully knock over the opposition early and then bat big.
Yeah, I personally would love it if New Zealand could get a leg spinner into the game at the moment, in their test game at the moment. That opportunity is really solely belongs to each Sodi, because of course Todd Astor was caused stumps on his career. But the irony being that you have to be more accurate as a wrist spinner in test cricket than you do in the shorter forms. The shorter forms, each can throw in all the variations. He can get away with a short ball. He can get away with 2 short balls and over. Well, when you play against test match cricketers who have good defensive techniques, and they know they're playing against a spin bowler who might have all the tricks, but who will bowl a loose ball and over, they'll sit, they'll defend, they'll sit, and then they'll just put that loose ball away. And captains cannot create enough pressure with spin bowlers who cannot bowl enough balls on the spot. Now, you think of, everyone thinks about Shane Warne, don't they? And about how much he ripped the ball and spun the ball. But Shane Warne was also amazingly accurate.
Yeah, and I think the challenge for Ish is he plays so much white ball cricket. You know, he's on the T20 circuit, he's been in the Caribbean, he's played in Canada, he's the coach of Rajasthan Royals, I think it is, a spin coach. But, you know, every team to have a leg spinner that's on song is just invaluable. They're wicket-taking machines.
And I bet Matt wants to see Ish Sodi out there, as I do, because as far as I'm concerned, watching wrist spinners and fast bowlers bowl is exciting. And it'd be nice to see wrist spinners and fast bowlers like Lockie Ferguson playing test match cricket. But, you know, so often test match cricket is about absorbing pressure, bowling long spells, bowling maidens, and accuracy is almost... You've got to have it, and if you don't have it, you're not going to be an effective test bowler.
Yeah, I totally agree, Rig, and I think there is. I actually think there is a little bit of space for Ish to get into that side. I think the one thing with it is that with their attack based around like the Colin de Grandhommes, Tim Southeys, where their run rates are quite low, Ish gets used for ND to go at 4s but to take wickets, and that's what we want from him. And especially when he's playing test cricket, we want him to be able to attack as much as possible, because that is good viewing for one, but also adds another wicket-taking option to your arsenal, especially when you go around New Zealand where the conditions are so different everywhere you go. Even though we are a thin nation and we should theoretically play on the same pitches everywhere we go, they are totally different everywhere we play.
But it's good to see him up there actually practicing, isn't it? And also signing autographs for young Conway, who's new to the team. Just excited to be there, getting his autograph bat signed.
I think Matthew would like to see Ish with a red ball in his hand there, which brings us to the next question. So you test legends. This is from Alexandra. That's the place. No, that's a person actually. Alexandra from North Shore. It's not North Shore from Alexandra. So
Alexandra is a great spot though as well.
I love Alexandra, a great place, and that's a good name as well. So what we've got here is most of the players in the test squad have only really played T20 cricket in the past number of months. Does it prepare them adequately for the rigours of test cricket? I like how you've thrown rigour in there as well, Alexandra.
Unfortunately, I can't answer this through experience.
You played T20 cricket though, Rigger.
No, I haven't.
You did.
How
Not
young do you think I am?
but did you
I'm
not,
really old.
Did you not play one domestic just as it started?
I'll tell you what, I think I played the original shortest form of the game, which was a game called action cricket. And it was brought in might have been the late 80s or early 90s. And it was had all sorts of rules, but it was the original short form. Then Cricket Max came in, and I played a lot of Cricket Max. So I can only really think of playing Cricket Max, which was 2 innings. It was 2 innings of 10, wasn't it? You batted for 10 overs, the other team batted, then you bat, and then going and playing first-class cricket after that. And I liked it. I actually quite liked going out there and doing something completely different. And then because it was so different, you just were able to you played a bit of cricket, you're charging around, you're with your mates, you were in that, hopefully in that high performance mentality. Then you're able to just go and you just play a different game. And there's no hurry, there's no rush. You don't have to generate a strike rate. And in a way, and from a batting perspective, I quite like that because it took one extra pressure away from you, and you just had to just occupy the crease.
Well, Jeets, in the county game, you go from first class to T20s. You change between all the formats. What did you used to do?
Yeah, well, first of all, Grant, county cricket's obviously, it's first class cricket, it's domestic cricket, so there's a different pressure when it comes to playing test cricket coming from IPLs, where it's broadcasted all around the world and there's so much money thrown at it, and it is high-end professionalism. Then you go to test cricket. I get what Alexander is trying to get at. Are they going to be prepared well enough? Well, yes, they are. They've had a lot of time. And that's part of being a professional sportsman nowadays, especially cricketer, where you have 3 formats to play it. You know, there's 2020s, there's 50-over cricket, there's test matches, and even if you look at this scenario here, you've got 3 T20s back-to-back-to-back, followed by 2 test matches effectively back-to-back, and that's just part of the rigours of international cricket. Will they be prepared? I hope so, because test cricket is the pinnacle of cricket, and if they're not prepared for red ball cricket, then you could say that their white ball game is going to fall by the wayside also.
You do play a lot of cricket, don't you, over there in England? So when you used to turn up to the ground in Warwickshire, did you actually know what sort of cricket you were going to be playing on that day?
Sometimes no. Sometimes we're in such a haze from the evening before, but no, it was cool. The great thing about county cricket is there's just another game the next day, and I'm sure, Riggy, you would have gone through the situation in New Grant where you're itching to get back out there because you're in such good nick, or you're actually a little bit like, I need to get back out there again because I didn't quite get what I wanted out of the day before. And that's what county cricket was about. It was about playing day in, day out. But these guys at this level now, they play so much cricket all around the world that they are used to picking up their bats and hitting balls.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, there is quite dramatic personnel changes between, especially the West Indies side. It's pretty much an all-new side. I'm telling you right now, I would prefer to be playing a form of the game before going on to another one than sitting in the hotel watching people play cricket. Even if I think playing a shorter form is better than just sitting there watching someone else do it before you have to go and play yourself. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. And the West Indian team have had an opportunity to play red ball cricket down in Queenstown. I think that's where they're playing the New Zealand A team right now. So they've come off nearly 7 days of gameplay down there, and it's been some long, arduous cricket looking at the scores. But they both teams, well, players from both sides have had an opportunity to bat for long periods and for bowl for long periods as well. So I'm sure the West Indies will be prepped, and I'm sure the Kiwis will be prepped because, you know, with the World Test Championship and the new rules in that championship, in terms of the points allocation, there are a chance of qualifying for a final still, so they wouldn't want to turn that down.
Okay, we've got another question in that's just come in from David from Hastings. Thank you, David, on the inside edge app here. Can you guys talk about the difference between facing 130 kilometers to facing 150 kilometers? Obviously it's faster, but do you have to premeditate where it's going to be bowled rather than see it from the hand?
Never premeditate. David, wasn't it? David from Hastings. By the way, congratulations. Hastings voted New Zealand's best town, wasn't it? It's a great spot there in the bay. And of course, I was born in Hastings Hospital. Oh no, I've got. What was I saying? David wants to know. Facing fast bowling.
Don't premeditate, you see.
Sorry, David. Just indulge me because I'm having to go back to the 1970s to think about facing fast bowling. Difference between facing 130 and 150. Never premeditate for a start. You will see the ball. You just need to be able to react. And it's almost like if you've only got 130 bowlers out there, for some reason they seem quite quick. Then you go up to 150, you just have to say, okay, watch the ball, I will see the ball, and trust yourself to react. A reasonable story I have, actually, I can remember facing Brett Lee, who I always saw quite nicely from the hand. And he was bowling down the offside, and I kept letting it go, which I did quite a lot. And I kept saying to myself, right, next time he bowls it down there, I'm going to square cut it. I'm going to try to score. And then he'd bowl another one down there, and I wouldn't square cut. It would just be past me before I'd actually reacted. But if you're premeditating, you'll get yourself in a real pickle. Your feet will go nowhere. And then you're in big trouble. So just, if it's quicker, just watch it closer and watch it for longer, and you'll be surprised at how much time you have.
Yeah, I agree with Rigger there. I mean, I can't test what Rigger did at the top of the order. That's different league, because I was down the back end, and most of the times my stumps were getting blown out of the ground before I had an opportunity to see the ball. But it is about that. It's also about trust. It's about trust in doing all the work that you can leading into that. I remember Rigger training to face, I'm not sure who it was, but it was at the base reserve, and he wanted to go indoors to really emulate how quick some of these guys were and how much swing they would get. And he'd get the 12th and 13th and 14th men to grab an incredible ball and get as close as they could and try and swing it as fast as they could at him, just to get him ticking over and getting prepped. I think he just wanted to face extra balls, and he saw us as an opportunity, us guys who weren't playing, as an opportunity to bowl to him. But it helped. It does help facing lots of balls.
Yeah, I'd say the fear of facing a fast bowler is worse than actually facing a fast bowler. It's like going to get an injection. You talk yourself into it's going to really hurt, and you actually then get the injection and you go, well, it wasn't that bad, was it? But if you carry on like a pork chop and move around, then it might actually hurt. So just stand there, back yourself, and realise that you actually are more capable than you actually think you are. So I hope that's helped.
Yeah, but it's that clarity of mind. I think both those things go hand in hand. The preparation that Jeets talks about, but also the clarity of mind and the game plan that you have going into the game. You have to prepare, do your analysis. You've got all the tools at your disposal as an international player, and it's just about using those tools, making sure that you have that real clarity going into facing someone like Mitchell Johnson, Morne Morkel, Stark. You know the shots you're going to play on that surface on that day, and trust that you're going to make those decisions. But it's not nice. No one likes it. Anyone that says they love facing 150 kilometers around their head is a liar.
But it's the challenge, isn't it? You're in there. You're at the coal face, and you've got to sort of enjoy that challenge. Anyway, thanks, fellas, and we hope we've done a good job in answering some of your questions there, and hopefully we can answer a lot more as the summer cricket continues. But on Spark Sport this summer, we're all access all areas with the Black Caps and White Ferns. And Brendan McCullum paid Kane Williamson a visit to find out the secrets behind his success.
Quite looking forward to this, actually. Haven't seen the boys for a little while. Operating in a little tent structure as well, which is something a bit different to what we used to have down at Lincoln. I believe Kane's here as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing him bat. Always used to love with Kane. We used to joke about he'd bat with like a pillow in his hand, those soft hands that he's got, so let's see if it's still the same. Always love watching this guy play, and typically he's still the last one at the net, so I thought I was going to have someone to throw for me, but I think I'm going to have to throw myself to you, Kano. So if you don't mind, mate, just to remind myself of what your game's all about, we'll jump in and have a bit of a bash.
My first set of throwdowns from you in 10 years.
All right, I'm just going to throw a few at you. Please don't hit me. That's actually a pretty good one to talk about.
What's that one?
Because I saw something on the way back just then.
Oh, yeah?
I saw the seam coming back at me.
Did you?
Do you remember that conversation we had, the first pink ball test match? It was the first pink ball test match we were playing, and Kane was batting in the nets, and the pink ball's had a green seam, eh?
Started off, yeah.
Started off green.
Yeah.
He comes down to me, he's facing the spin, he goes, geez, I'm really struggling just to pick up the seam. I looked at him, I was like, pick up the seam? He's like, yeah, you know how you can see the seam when the ball's bowling? I said, you mean like for spin and pace and that? He said, yeah.
No.
So, mate, I've never seen the seam in my life. There's a reason why you're as good as what you are, and the rest of us are all just sort of battling away. But is that honestly true? You can actually see?
No, I think there's just an awareness, you know, when you're focusing on the ball, that when it doesn't have the seam, then your bearings of how it's arriving, I think is different, you know. So the spin's going over top of the ball versus, you know what I mean? So you kind of get a...
So what about a seamer then?
Yes, well, yeah, similar thing. I mean, you got those I mean, well, Jimmy Neesham, best in the world at swinging it both ways, and you're wanting to keep a close eye on that so you can try and negotiate. You know, give yourself the best chance if he is looking to swing them in, swing them away, and provide some sort of shape or some sort of resistance. So you don't, I guess you're not seeing it super clear, but it's, for me anyway, I think it's just a bit of an awareness of, you just sort of pick it up a little bit.
And you've always, like that's all the way through, you've always tried to focus on the same. Are you focusing on it as he's running into bowl, or you're focusing on it when he's letting the ball go?
You know, I suppose I don't try and think about it like too much. I'm trying to be relaxed, look at the general area of where the ball's coming from, and rely on the fact that your instincts will sort of pick up on, you know, maybe the change in direction of the seam and those sorts of things. So
I'm going to throw a few more.
Yeah.
I do know you're quite hard on the guys who are throwing as well, too. I've had
not intentionally.
I'm sure that's developed. I don't remember you being quite as hard earlier on, but is that a perfectionist type?
I won't say anything, but I think they sense some body language, and then they think I'm hard on them. But I'd never discourage a thrower. You know, I want them to keep throwing.
On that note, I feel encouraged to keep throwing too.
Good.
One thing I want to talk to you about in a minute, though, is something I think everyone around the world considers in your game has been the ability to play the ball so late. So while you're watching a few of these, I want to just have you thinking about that too, because I want to find out some of your answers. They sort of refer to it as Kane's batting with the pillow in his hand, I think, from memory.
That was when I started.
So are you looking for it to bounce, or are you just waiting as late as you can to play the ball? Is that a conscious thought?
Just trying to, basically if there's potential for the ball to move sideways, which is obviously a threat, you know, to a batsman, then trying to hit the ball, nice and late, to give yourself the best chance to adjust. You know, if you commit to the first line and it swings or seams, then I think straight away you can, put yourself into a little bit of trouble.
And you're looking to try and play it under your eyes?
Pretty much. I mean, it's interesting. You get on other surfaces and you actually want to let the hands go because you want to meet the ball rather than using the pace. And I think when you are playing late, you tend to use the pace a little bit because you're letting the ball come, under your eyes. And however, if the wicket is perhaps skiddy and low, then you want to try and adjust and get the hands out so you're meeting the ball, making that contact out in front. So it does change, and I try to make those adjustments.
How do you tell yourself to wait though? Like the bowler's coming in, I think most people, the more hyped up they are, the further their hands get out in front of themselves. They want to get after the ball. How do you compose yourself enough?
I mean, I guess trying to keep your hands back and, hitting the, trying to hit the top of the ball rather than, hitting the back side of it. If you're sort of behind and pushing at the ball rather than over the top of the ball and meeting it, then I think it can create a better shape. But yeah, so that's kind of the idea.
Right, I'll keep trying, sorry.
Yeah, come on,
Do you get annoyed with coaches and stuff and ask
just
questions?
keep talking, yeah.
Sorry. And so your movements are all geared towards it as well?
Yeah, it's just it's an intention, and then outside of that, your game naturally will, try and adjust and you'll play your shots, but hopefully it just means you're playing them from a slightly different place. So, rather than out in front of you and driving the ball, you're sort of striking it back here, and often it might mean that the ball goes squarer sometimes, or square through each side of the wicket, but that's kind of the nature of perhaps where you're striking the ball.
When you first started playing international cricket, you were very controlled, very disciplined, very in your own sort of game. And what we've seen in the last few years is you've developed the ability to be aggressive and to be able to transfer your game across different formats and be very successful as well. How have you been able to expand your game to cover all three formats?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a challenge, and you're always wanting to, improve in all of those areas, whatever the format may be, but especially the changing between formats. You go on a tour and it's 2020 cricket followed by Test, followed by one-day cricket, and for me, I think initially you saw the T20 game come into our sport, and it sort of suggested you had to play one way, and it was hitting the ball a long way. you were fortunate enough to be blessed with power and fast hands, and you know, that's one example. And then, you know, you were trying to then, in your own mind, find ways to try and be effective, try and offer to your team, you know, as well as you can with the skill sets that you had.
Playing with you and watching you in the last few years as well, you always look like you've got, no matter how hard you're having to travel with your skill, you've always got a calm presence and an understanding of what the game requires of you and your team at that point in time. Is that a conscious thought?
Yeah, look, I think decision making is the most important thing, and I think when you are calm, then it does give you the best chance to make good decisions, whether your game is feeling particularly good in the nets or not. When you're a little bit younger and get quite caught up in your game, just having that open mind of, hang on, what it is that you're faced with, what's the threat or the key threat, you know, that you might need to look to address on the ever-changing conditions that, you know, playing the international game kind of forces you to try and learn quickly.
All right, it's good, mate. We'll have a few more throwdowns and see if anything else comes up.
Yeah.
But yeah, my shoulder's got a bit sore.
Yeah, 3 throws in.
Have that one again. T20 cricket.
Yeah.
Your setup doesn't really change in all of the formats, does it? You got the same, and from when you started your career to now, it's pretty similar, isn't it?
I think the fundamentals probably haven't changed. My body's, I guess, changes a little bit, and you just, you know, try and access and get your body into positions to hit the ball in certain areas, but maybe a little bit more movement in T20, but the setup pretty much the same, yeah.
So you're just trying to feel a balanced position with that setup of yours?
Yeah, and play nice and straight, and then I think, you know, that gives you a pretty good opportunity to access those other areas. Yeah, and then the situation then, you know, throws you into a whole different set of decision making and the areas you're looking to access. But right here and now with the throws that you're giving me, I'm just trying to play nice and straight and fundamental focus, really.
And not really move until you get the length and the line of where it's...
Yeah, just be nice and still.
And pick the seam up helps, I suppose.
Watching. That could have been a lot harder, so don't complain.
Shot.
You're pretty accurate for, you know, coach for a new coach. You aren't conditioned to just lovely leg stump half volleys. It's nice.
Steady, I'm under pressure with these throws.
He's on the money. He knows how to make us feel good.
Sorry.
It's got
Finish on that for a sec. I just want to talk one more thing.
Yeah. Tips, please.
No, not tips. No, I just want to. So we go back to that setup. So you're pretty sort of neutral position.
Yeah.
You tap your hands a lot, don't you? And sort of occupy your hands a bit while the guys run out to bowl.
Yeah, try and make sure they get back at some stage.
But you've always seemed to have like really soft hands. I sort of compare it to, say, without wanting to talk about myself here, Kane, compare it to my setup, which was a bit more sort of belligerent.
Jeez.
You know what I mean? Like sort of my hands slightly apart, and I was thinking I've got to try and get them before they get me type mentality. Mainly because I couldn't see the seam, couldn't play the ball late, and didn't really have any finesse. But so sort of that style of play versus your style of play, which is more measured and calculated in neutral positions, nice soft hands, and a bit more precise kind of setup.
Yeah, I mean, if I could do it like you, then that, you know, but I didn't have an option. but that's the beauty of the game, isn't it? That everybody does it differently, and you've got, you know, your way of doing it, and it was to make sure you threw that first punch, and then you know. I remember we played that game, one of your last one maybe, and it was on that green seamer, and I faced 70 balls and got 5 runs, and you faced 70 and you're on 130, so I was sort of questioning my options actually. But it was, you know, a very different approach, and that's, you know, your decision making drives it, and then you realise sometimes actually, you know, if adversity's sort of thrown at you to a point where the defensive option isn't a good one, then you might force yourself to try and throw that first punch.
So that's Kane, the batsman, in terms of his own approach, but like putting together a team as a captain, do you sort of look at it and go, okay, we need a type of player like this, and we need to couple him with this sort of player to try and get the ingredients to try and make the best side?
In an ideal world, yeah, but I think, as you know, and that in New Zealand it's not always the easiest way with the volume of players that you have, and something that you've spoken a lot about, and it's still very, very important today, is the character and the role that's important, and so you see people come in and feel like they belong, and all of a sudden pick up some slack and do some pretty awesome things, and I think that character in the person is probably more important than maybe the style of play. You just adjust and adapt and do as best you can with what you have, and that's just that ever-growing piece in terms of a culture that you're trying to keep putting into.
2019 World Cup, watching you guys, I don't necessarily think you were the best team in the tournament, but you were able to
We weren't ranked number one.
No, you weren't ranked number one, but you
yeah.
had a lot of experienced players, and you gave those key moments, I think, of like the semi-final, for instance, and most people would have ridden you off halfway through that game, but because of your experience in the tactical elements, you just worked out what to do.
Yeah, we adapted and perhaps made some good decisions, and as you know, you make one good decision and it can go a long way, and I reflect on that tournament. It was a real sort of game of chess, where it was just adapting on a day, and teams are on very different wickets, and it was, you couldn't go in with any preempted ideas, everybody thought it was 350, and then you reflect back to our previous one, which the unknowns that were there as well, so we had a lot of experience and a lot of problem solvers, but we'd never been in that territory before, so there was that factor, whereas I think that was a positive experience going into the next World Cup, where you had a number of guys that had been there. However, there were some other challenges, like you say, where perhaps we weren't the most gifted team or ranked number one, but in our own way, we could be very competitive and try and do it, in a way that was suited to us.
I don't want to keep going back to it, because
yeah, come on, bro.
What would it have been like if you had won that World Cup?
Who, us or England?
That's quite good.
It was, a spectacle that obviously offered to so many people, and you happened to be, a part of playing in it, and so the emotion that you felt wasn't probably quite like people watching it, and the Kiwi supporters and the English supporters and the roller coaster that they were on, and so you were just looking at the next step and how can we be good here, and obviously make a difference and all that sort of thing as a player, and it's still one of those games that the context around it, World Cup final, I mean, even if it was a game on your average Wednesday, it still probably wouldn't have made a heap of sense in terms of how it was decided, but it was still an amazing thing to be a part of, and I know guys will reflect back on it pretty fondly, and there were just, there were a lot of uncontrollables like in any game of cricket that I do think happened really late in the game, which probably meant it was very hard to make some sort of strong adjustment to shift that momentum, and it was it was an amazing game, but yeah, how did you think about it?
No, I agree with you.
Yes.
I guess the thing I sort of look at is I go, does winning that World Cup or not define Kane Williamson, define his cricket team? I don't necessarily think it does. I think what defines you guys is what you've been able to do year on year, and that's inspire the next generation of cricketers. I think the way that you've handled yourselves throughout the whole thing, you threw as many shots as you could from on the field, but then the way you carried yourselves as people and as leaders off the field was admired the world round. And I think that's more important than whether you stand up on the podium with the trophy or not. Have you had a chance during this time to sort of sit back and just, I guess, stop and smell the roses a little bit 10 years on from your debut? And think, what else do I want to achieve in this game?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You sort of play one game and in your own mind, that's what you've wanted to do, and then you have a time like this, like you mentioned, and you sort of remove the focus from the next game to a reflection on yeah, like you mentioned, 10 years, which is a bit of a scary thought. It's gone pretty quickly, and there's, you know, a lot that's happened and a lot that, you know, we've been through and the other guys, and it's been a, you know, hell of a journey. But, you know, I suppose the best part of it is the growth that you see and the transition that constantly needs to be made. Is, you know, people come and people go, and like yourself, and you know, like it's an ever-moving piece that you're trying to deal with and keep in a good place, but accept that it just does change, and that's been the most enjoyable part. And I suppose it sort of segues into the change in formats as a player, and there is something really enjoyable about the challenge of trying to adjust your game and between the formats and try and work things out a little bit. But always a challenge, just, you know, one that you just keep trying to sink your teeth into and improve on.
Pretty much done here, mate. Thanks for your time, appreciate it, and look forward to watching you this season on Spark Sport.
Cheers, best.
Thoroughly enjoyable, that chat between the former New Zealand captain Brendan McCullum, our co-commentator, and Kane Williamson, the current captain of New Zealand. Test team will be the next port of call as we move on from the T20 aspect or component of this tour. The test will be upon us in a few days' time. This coming Thursday, first test match, 10:30 a.m. local time at Seddon Park in Hamilton, and then the second test match on the 11th of December, and that will be at the Basin Reserve in Wellington. Really love that place. I'm sitting next to Craig McMillan, former New Zealand player and batting coach. Baz McCullum is here with me as well. Your thoughts on this test lineup?
Well, very good test lineup, I think, Bish. I think it's a team which has been incredibly successful in their own conditions. Very well led by Kane Williamson. A lot of leaders throughout that side when you look down that list. Trent Boult, Tom Latham, Tim Southey, of course, the 101 test veteran Ross Taylor. Neil Wagner's been around for a long time. PJ Watling's been around for a long time. And there's a little bit of youth in there as well. So look, I think it's a really, really good test lineup. Probably a pretty easy test lineup for the selectors to have pulled together. And I think they're going to be a very difficult proposition for a touring West Indies side in these conditions here in New Zealand.
Thank you very much for that, Baz. No hospitality there whatsoever. Now, it's great to be sitting here with you. Craig, you've played for many years. You've been batting coach not that long ago for this team. You see that team in the same light as Baz?
I do. I see a real consistency in performance with that test side. As it is for most sides around the world, they know their conditions well. They've got a good balance within it. I think the fast bowlers obviously tend to favour in New Zealand and do well. You saw that in the series against India last year, where effectively New Zealand just blew them off the park. With pace, I think they'll do the same. They'll try and do the same to the West Indies as well. They'll throw their pace bowlers at them. There'll be a lot of short stuff. Be interesting to see the pitches and how much seam movement there is on day one, how green they are, because that will be a factor. And but I'm really looking forward to the test series. I think that New Zealand have developed well, but they need to keep winning to try and make the final of the World Test Championship. So these tests are really important for both sides, but especially New Zealand.
Yeah, it was certainly not a derogatory comment towards West Indies, Bish, but what I find with this New Zealand lineup is they are so difficult to play against in their own conditions. They've got a seam bowling unit who are just so consistent and precise at what they do. I think the extra bounce that the New Zealand wickets offer as well really assists the likes of Southey and Boult, who are predominantly swing bowlers, so they're going to get some assistance in the air, but they're also getting some assistance off the wicket. And then Neil Wagner has just been an absolute hero for New Zealand over a number of years. His ability to bowl long spells and testing spells, and he'll test opposition batters out with that short pitch plan, and it just seems to really work for them. And I think even the batters understand how to play in these conditions too. So look, it's not just the West Indies that are here. They may fare better than what those who have been here have fared before. There's some very good cricket teams which have arrived here and have struggled in these conditions.
I like the fact, in terms of the bowling lineup, I think it's a really good point. You've got Southey and Boult who swing the ball. If the ball doesn't swing, then you've got Wagner who comes in and will bounce the ball and test your defence off the back foot with short balls. You've got Kyle Jamieson now, who's more of a seamer. You know, he gets some swing, but he's also got height and bounce. And it's a good point, Brendan. It's not so much how much New Zealand pitchers seam, it's how much they bounce. Because from a batting point of view, it's the bounce that gets your hands into the game. And as a batter, you don't want to be pushing wide with your hands. So you can leave the ball. And generally, overseas sides struggle to leave the ball on length. So because New Zealand bowlers are so good at finding that length that attacks the top of the stumps and brings them players onto the front foot, quite often other sides will be a touch short. And New Zealand players know how to leave on length. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting test series, and New Zealand very hard to beat at home, but I think the West Indies can offer some problems, especially if they win a toss and they do find some helpful conditions. Then New Zealand could well have their work cut out, so it's going to be intriguing.
Greg McMillan has just jumped ahead of Baz McCullum in my books for that obvious segue into the strengths of the West Indies team who will be watching now. I'm just joking on that. I want to tackle two things. This, folks, is mainly going to be a batting segment. We've got two excellent former players here, but you talked about the excellence of the fast bowling, and many people have been messaging me and saying, why is Lockie Ferguson not in the test team?
Well, he was in the test team when New Zealand went to Australia last year, and he played, in fact, the first test match at Perth, and he broke down, and it was a difficult one for him. It was hot. The temperatures were ranged up into the mid-40s, and it's a tough place to tour, and for him to go straight in and play that first test match, unfortunately he was exposed with his preparation at that stage. I don't think that the Test cricket dream is over for Lockie Ferguson by any stretch of the imagination, but at this stage he's probably just gone back a bit, not because he's regressed, but because Kyle Jamieson, when he got his opportunity, was unbelievable, and I thought the way Kane Williamson used him was really, really clever. He gave him the luxury of being able to bowl downwind, and he bowled him in favourable times as well, and he allowed him to enter international cricket and to be able to make an instant impact. And I think that's a significant play from Kane Williamson, from the New Zealand selectors, and unfortunately it's meant that Lockie Ferguson has now gone back in the pack a little bit, but is building depth amongst the squad.
I mean, if we're being brutally honest here, which we try to do, don't we, guys? A test debut at Christchurch at Hagley Oval is probably a little bit easier than Perth against Australia in terms of the conditions and the opposition, but you have to say that Kyle Jamieson made every post a winner. He's got some attributes that are unique in terms of his height and the bounce he gets, but Lockie Ferguson is going to be there or thereabouts. You know, with the Kiwi attack, has been around a long time, bowled a lot of balls, and there will be injuries that come up throughout the summer. So I think the exciting thing from a New Zealand point of view is the depth they have. So if someone gets injured or falls out or whatever, then you can bring someone else in and they can fill that spot rather well.
We promised this would be a batting discussion because Brendan just had a great masterclass, as we saw, with the current captain, Kane Williamson. What is it, Brendan and Craig, that makes Kane as excellent a player as he is?
Well, I think it's very hard to sum up in a short description, Bish, because first of all, I think he is a bit of a freak when it comes to his ability with bat in hand and his mindset as well. I think even throughout that masterclass, it was very difficult for me to understand, almost, to try and get the answers out of Kane, because he simply bats on he plays the game in a different space to what the rest of us play it.
He almost talks a different language at times, doesn't he? That you don't quite sort of understand, being a mere mortal, and you're throwing to obviously one of the greats.
Yeah, absolutely he does, and I've had the privilege over the last couple of weeks while I've been in quarantine of actually being able to help out the New Zealand guys, and Kane was there throughout that time, and I spent a lot of time with him and got the luxury of being able to see him up close. It's different when you're playing with someone, because you're so worried about your own game also, that you may sort of jump in and jump out of other guys' games occasionally, but you don't get to see it with the same level of detail exposed. And in the last couple of weeks, I've found really fascinating to see how he goes about his work, and his mindset is just, he's honestly, he's on a different world. He's in a different space to the rest of us as players, and he is going to go down as our greatest player, our greatest batsman of all time, and he'll do it by a stretch too. And it's not to be derogatory to those who have been before or those who are coming, but he is just that much better than everyone else. And what I love about him as well, that Kane is just Kane. There's no what you see on the screens and what you see when he's out there leading New Zealand is what Kane Williamson is like, and he's such an amazing representation of what the people of New Zealand are like, and he's adored around the world, but he's adored throughout New Zealand too, and it's not just for his game, but it's for the person that he is too, and we're very, very lucky to have him as leader of our New Zealand cricket side.
I know you're going to delve into that, Craig, and I just want you to entwine what I'm going to say into that for me, because he uses the word freak, right? When I think of someone described like that, I'm thinking, let's say, Virat Kohli or Viv Richards or Steve Smith, who's a little bit different. People look at Kane, I look at Kane and think orthodoxy, well coached, but that's not what I'm hearing. You were batting coach for a good bit. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think there is a degree of freakishness about how he plays. His ability to pick up the ball early, acknowledge length. I think the great players pick up length quicker than anyone else, and that gives them a fraction of a second later more time than anyone else, but also the ability for him, and I don't think there's anyone else in the world that plays the ball as late as what Kane does. So he allows the ball to come closer to him. He plays so late. He's got those hands that are soft. You talked about Brendan. He looks like he's batting with a pillow at times. But I think the thing that, with Kane, he's so low-key, and he does talk a different language. Like quite often when you're throwing to him in the nets, he'll be talking about shapes. So it's the shape of his body, the shape of his shots is how he's judging how the session's going. And so there's different things that he's looking at. It's quite routine-based. My arm still hasn't recovered, and it's had 18 months off from the amount of throwing that I did over a period of time to him. But quite often you'd be throwing for 20 minutes. Well, no, actually, you'd throw to him for 3 or 4 minutes, and it would be perfect. He'd hit every ball in the middle of the bat, and you'd say, right, you're done, mate. And you'd say, no, I want a few more, just want to... And from the end that I was throwing, everything looked like it was absolutely in the right place. Ball's going where it should do. And yet for him, it wasn't quite right. And he's always searching for something, so you keep going and going. And then after 20 minutes, you're back at the same point. So then you keep going a bit longer. And it's just one of those things that I think the greats, they're always searching for that little bit more. But anyone else that's looking and watching, and there's nothing wrong with what was happening. So it was really intriguing. I considered myself very lucky to be able to work with him over that period of time. And I think that one of the great things about T20 cricket is that it's allowed him to expand his game, so that, you're right, you talk about orthodox. So you wouldn't think that he's necessarily a very good T20 player because his game's geared up for Test cricket certainly, and maybe one-day cricket as well. But I think his progression and the ability to expand through T20 cricket has also helped him in those other formats as well.
Well, that was actually one of the things that he was wanting to work on, is because he had just been away at the IPL, and he'd very successful IPL at that. He wanted to try and bring his game back a little bit and to condense his defensive game and to get his mindset shifted from trying to adjust himself across the crease or attack a bowler or get deeper than crease, to more focus on the defensive lines he wants to operate, the zones that he wants to hit the ball, how late he wants to hit it, and to try and respect the lines that the ball's coming at and where he needs to be aware of where the risk was. And he doesn't want to give his shots away because he knows that he still has them there, but he just wants to try and reduce the level of risk somewhat so that he can be as prolific as what he has been throughout his entire career.
And that's one of the challenges for the modern day player, is going from white ball back to red ball. Very easy, I think, to go from red ball to white because you expand your game, you play more shots. But for the players, they go from playing T20 cricket 2 days later, they're batting on a green one in Hamilton in a test match. So there is a real mental adjustment that has to be made, and it's not a physical or a technical adjustment over that time. It's a real mental adjustment in terms of your game plan and having the discipline to stick to a game plan, because how they bat on Thursday in that first test will be very different to how they bat tonight. So it's one of the challenges that the modern day player has, and sometimes if you don't get it right, then it can be a bit messy.
You probably saw as well, Bish and Macca, in that masterclass that we did, that a lot of the time I was almost, you could see he was getting frustrated with the fact that I was stopping him from batting, and he was kind of like, just enough talk, just more batting. And I found over the last couple of weeks throwing to him that he does a lot of talking himself, but he'd rather you just you listen a little bit, and I found that really fascinating. And I think he almost processes things himself by verbalising it to his coach rather than needing information out of a coach. And I found that really fascinating. I find most players, they need coaches to be able to assist them to be able to get their game improved. What I find with Kane is he understands his game and he understands how to coach his game himself. He just needs a bit of a sounding board occasionally to be able to process it himself.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because I think back to a couple of sessions where I'd throw to him and the session would probably be 25 to 30 minutes long, and we haven't said a lot. I haven't said a lot. You're right. He would come down after he's hit some balls and just say this, oh, I'm just feeling like, you know, this isn't quite where it should be. And like I say, at the other end, it looks perfect and there's nothing wrong with what's going on, but you're right, he verbalises it, goes back down, thinks about it, and then it actually falls into place. So, yeah, really interesting guy to work with.
And just to take this discussion further, I enjoyed some of the things you talked about, hard hands for you versus his soft hands, and he wanted to swap with you, you wanted to swap with him, if it were possible. Guys say a lot, you hear a lot of young players say, well, this is the way I play. I'm good in this format, but Test cricket or first-class cricket requires something different. What do you guys both say to players like that, given your vast past experience?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Bish, because I was actually confronted with that just recently in my role as Kolkata Knight Riders coach in the IPL. We've got a young, incredible talent in Tom Banton, who plays for England, and he's a young man with it all in front of him. He's entertained on a few occasions so far at international level, but there's big tabs on him being the next big thing in England. And he is a really, really wonderful guy as well, but he's almost a little bit of a victim of the environment which he's been brought into, which is total professionalism, and you're allowed to be able to pick your own way of preparing for games. And I find young players need some scars to be able to then adapt to situations when you're on the road. You might be on a long tour of, say, a Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, and you have missed out a few times, and you're missing your family back home or your friends or your life back home, and you're away with a very few amount of people, and the media might be into you a little bit, and you need to be able to have some scars to have gone through that and come out the other side. And the thing with Tom, which we managed to get into him through conversations, by the end of the IPL, he adapted his training. Well, he was a bit more open with his training. So at the start, he would only face throws. He didn't want to face bowlers. And that, obviously, bowlers can be uncomfortable in the nets, and a lot of guys who are towards the back end of their careers start to take that option. And understandably so, because it's not necessarily going along to a training. It's not necessarily as much fun when you're towards the back end of your career. But he hadn't known or hadn't thought too much of the fact that wasn't actually right for him. And through conversations with him, he then understood that maybe he needs to broaden his trainings a little bit more. And it's okay to fail at training. It's okay to not get something right at training, because you actually might learn something, and you might need that in your locker when times are tough on the road at some stage.
Do you also think, Baz, that it's a bit of a cop-out for the player? It's saying, that's how I play. I believe that depending on what format you play, that you actually have to be a bit more adaptable to the situation and to the format of the game. And quite often guys will say, that's just how I play, that's my style, that's how I'm going to do it. I just wonder sometimes whether that's a cop-out.
I think sometimes it may be, but it's a different. We've got kids the same age, as quite young, and it's different to what it was when we were all younger, and the game is different, and there's more going on in life and society. So you can't question that people want, if they're playing international cricket or they're on that journey, then they want it. They have the desire. You can't question their desire, that maybe they just haven't been exposed to some of those methods. So I prefer to look at it and say, can I give you something different? Have you thought about something different, rather than saying you're doing it wrong, you need to do it this way.
And that's where it's important, I think, from a coaching point of view, that you ask questions of the player. They'll come up with the answer. They will find the answer. You'll probably a lot of the time already know the answer, but for them to have the buy-in, they have to come up with the answer. So that's a good point, that you ask them, try and lead them in a certain direction, hoping that they get to a certain point. But I think, when you talk about batting and how you bat in England is totally different to how you bat in India. So his style in England might work in England and that might be fine, but coming to India, he's going to have to find some different shots, because he's going to be a lot more spin bowled. So that style won't necessarily morph into another country. So I think you have to be adaptable from a batting point of view, that you don't have the same style. You have the ability to add or to take out certain shots depending on the opposition and the country that you're batting in.
Speak to those differences for me, because you said batting in one place and another is different. India, Australia, England. Speak to specifically the differences for me.
Well, I think in India, obviously there's a massive focus on spin. So the ability to rotate the strike and get down the other end. I remember the first couple of tours to Sri Lanka and India, facing the likes of Muralitharan and Kumble. I struggled, could play shots that would pick up the odd boundary, the odd big shot, but I struggled to rotate the strike. I struggled to get down the other end, and it wasn't until come back on a second tour, once you've gone through a review of the tour and where you failed, and you actually need to get down the other end. That's where a lot of the learning happens. And so I had to develop a sweep shot. In those conditions where the ball didn't bounce a lot, was low and slow, I had to develop a sweep shot, which meant it wasn't a boundary shot, but it meant that I could hit the sweeper and get down the other end. There's other options. You can use your feet and pick a gap or do whatever, but I didn't have that shot as part of my game plan when I first went away on tour, and I struggled because I had 3 or 4 around the bat, so there was a lot of defensive shots being played, the odd big shot, and then you get out. And because if you face enough spin, or you face great bowlers for 15, 20 balls, they're going to get you out. And it was the same with Shane Warne. One of the best bits of advice he ever gave me, actually, was he said, the better the bowler, the more attacking you have to be. So he said, when you face an average spinner, you actually can sit, they'll give you enough to hit them. But the better the bowler, you actually have to take the battle to them and put them under pressure, and then you're more than likely to get more balls to score off and to hit through that method. So that was one of the things that, after talking with him, lucky enough to get that advice relatively early on. Didn't win too many battles, but in fact lost a lot more than what I won. But that was my method and the way I tried to go about things. So I think when you go away to different countries, it's really important that you have a style, you have a game plan, and the training is the best place to work those things out, because quite often they're similar to conditions to what you have out in the middle.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit different from that, Bish, because I heard Mark Richardson talk earlier and he said never predetermine. Well, to be honest, I had to predetermine, because for me that was part of my preparation. I needed to understand or have an estimated guess at what the wicket would play like. So did I think it would have more bounce tomorrow? Did I think it would be lower? Did I think it would spin a lot? Where do I think they would try and bowl to me on, or what particular length they would bowl? And then it was a matter for me about trying to understand what the dangers were for me. Once I understood the dangers, then I could go about trying to be aggressive to certain bowlers, and that changed in different conditions all around the world. I was also lucky enough for me, playing in the subcontinent, I got a lot of opportunities to open the batting, which I didn't necessarily do a lot in more Western countries, and my role was pretty specific in those countries, and it was to be slightly more attacking, because the new ball is a slightly easier place to bat in the subcontinent. And when the spinners eventually come on, if you were on a few runs and you were actually under playing with a bit of momentum, then you could try and put some pressure on the spinners straight away, knowing that they could be key performers and dangers for you, or for the rest of the guys within the lineup. So I would always try and take an aggressive mindset to the subcontinent, whereas some of the much better players and defensively better players could try and outlast the opposition spinners a lot more. So it's fascinating how different people go about their preparations in different ways. But yeah, it's interesting. Whereas Australia, for me, it was less about the conditions and it was more about the environment. You're going to have to expect that things were going to be tough everywhere you went. It was going to be a cauldron, and you needed to overcome that mentally and be able to get out there and still take them on.
It's interesting just listening to you talk about that, Baz, because effectively what you're telling me is you had a game plan, and that was your game plan, that to be aggressive, but you also were aware of the areas that you thought they might attack you or that were a weakness that could pose you trouble, so you tried to eliminate them or keep them to the side. I believe that the best batsmen in the world are the best decision makers, the best problem solvers. So they make good decisions over a long period of time. They eliminate mistakes, especially in Test cricket, because you make a mistake, there's 3 slips in a gully. You make a mistake in one-day cricket, there's 1 slip, it goes to third man for a single. It's the same mistake, the same shot. In Test cricket, it's out. In one-day cricket, you get a single. So the ability to eliminate those mistakes and adapt to the different formats, to me, is crucial. And I think, you know, as I said, the problem solving is crucial, and the discipline to have a game plan. You had a game plan, and you were pretty disciplined at sticking to the positive, the aggressive side to it, which is why you were so successful. When a lot of guys find trouble is when they have a game plan, but they're not disciplined enough to stick to it, because they either doubt themselves, or they're not sure about which way they should play because there's selection issues or form issues. They don't stay true to it. So it's a really interesting one. Once the best players, to me, have a game plan, they have the discipline to stick to it, and they can do it for long periods of time. And if you can do that, to me, you're going to spend a lot of time in the middle, which is going to mean a lot of runs.
Yeah, I was just trying to think, as Mac was talking there, he talks about sticking to game plan and things, and I agree with that totally. I also think you need to understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and be okay with the weaknesses. I think back to my own career, the latter part of my career, it was when I accepted that I didn't have a great defensive game, therefore I needed to rely more on an attacking game, and be okay with that then I think I was able to then allow my strengths to be able to actually prosper. Absolutely,
it's a great point. Well, I guess what I was saying is that every batsman's got weaknesses, but the great ones, you don't get to see the weaknesses that often. They hide them well. And I think there's different ways to do that. Yours was to be aggressive, so then it took your defensive, which you thought was perhaps the lesser part of your game. You didn't have to defend too many balls, because by putting the bowler on the back foot, by being aggressive, all of a sudden he's bowling more balls that you want to attack. Rather than allowing someone to run up and bowl in an area like say a Glenn McGrath, you knew where he was going to bowl. You knew that he was going to be there or thereabouts, and if he bowled there for a certain amount of time, he'd nick you off. So you're going to use your feet, you're going to bang him over his head, and all of a sudden he'll go shorter, he'll go fuller, he'll go away from that area that makes him successful, and then that allows you more of a chance to succeed and score runs. For me, is how I look at it.
Yeah, that's right. I look at Ben Stokes now, for instance. I think he's a great example of that. And trying to think of New Zealand examples, I think guys like Jimmy Neesham and Daryl Mitchell, Colin de Grandhomme is a really good option, where his game is predominantly attacking. And I think, you know, those sorts of players in those luxury positions can really be aggressive and can own that part of their game. Then the flip side is the guys like Kane or Tom Latham, Alistair Cook worldwide, where they are able to be patient and disciplined and try and outlast the opposition, knowing the old school mentality that you'll get your runs in the back end of the day, not the front. The bowlers is the front end of the day, and the batters is the back. And I think it's trying to understand which part of the puzzle you are, and what your role within the team is, and what's going to give you the greatest chance of success.
And having difference. I think having different players that play a different way. Like, you can't have 6 of the same, because then, you know, it's really difficult. And I think that's what's good with this New Zealand side, is that they all complement one another really well. Latham at the top can bat all day, is disciplined with his game plan. 11 Test hundreds, sets a platform. Kane the same. You know, Taylor comes in, can play aggressively. And you've got a good mix. De Grandhomme comes in at 6 or 7, and all of a sudden can change a Test match in half a session with his aggression and his power. So it's just having that balance of the players in the right area, but different games and different game plans, I think, are really important for sides.
Just to remind our viewers that the game has been interrupted, 25 for 1. The West Indies having been asked to bat in this final T20 International. The rain is just easing up just a little bit, and the hard-working ground staff, who get very little credit wherever they are in the world, are at work. Some will say, be cruel and say that's what they get paid for. Well, there's a lot of water, so you'll get some timings for you. That's the other thing in terms of when we can finish. But for now, it's just enjoyable hearing you, Brendan McCullum, and Craig McMillan talking about batting. And Craig, you have another point to make.
I'm just wondering, Bish, and you've seen a lot of cricket worldwide as well. Do you think players bat now with less fear than what we used to in our generation?
You're looking at Brendan and asking, oh, okay.
You're a bowler, so you brought fear into batsmen's hearts. But there seems to be less worry about getting out. And I just wonder the effect of T20 cricket on that in terms of, you know, what then filters into Test cricket. Ben Stokes, the Ashes, that innings he played at Edgbaston, that wouldn't have been played 10 years ago. No one would have had the scope or the confidence to bat like that. I don't think that innings was played 10 years ago. I really don't. Now with T20 cricket and the way that these guys play, where they score 400 a day in Test cricket rather than 250, 300, to me that's just changed, and it's filtered through, like I said, the format. So I think there's a real fearlessness about batting. And you mentioned it as youngsters, you watch your boy play, they just want to whack the ball. They don't care about getting out or the repercussions like we used to think.
Well, not to the same level, but I do think that you look at Jofra Archer's battle with Steve Smith, you look at Lockie Ferguson when he's unsung and the tremors that he causes in the batting order in different formats of the game. And there are a number of other fast bowlers around the world. But I do think batsmen take more risks now. I don't necessarily feel that they always manage that risk well enough in some ways. Guys are ramping Brett Lee, Sean Tate, all of that back down the road. That definitely would not have been seen or thought of 20 years ago, Brendan. So I think there's more risk, there's more accepting of that risk, but I still think there's a management of that needs to be done.
I think when we played, there was almost an acceptable way to get out and an unacceptable way to get out. Now, with T20 cricket, I think that's gone out the window. And now it's, if you get caught at long on or long off on the boundary, it doesn't matter. You'd play the same shot the next day, whereas not so sure that was the case. There's a freedom, I think, in batting that wasn't there in previous generations, which I think has added to the game and it helped produce some amazing batting performances over the last 4 or 5 years.
I think it has to be managed because we were sitting here when Seifert was scoring and Brendan, when he tried to play that little scoop or ramp with the fine leg and the square leg. So I don't want young players to go away from this chat thinking it's a free-for-all. Speak to that for me, Brendan.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Bish. And I've had the pleasure again of spending a lot of time with Tim Seifert recently, and he just has this game which is, he's got so many shots and he can play all of them. And his greatest challenge, and I think he's an incredible talent, I really do, I think he's a special player in the making. His greatest challenge will be to not play, his greatest challenge will be to choose the shot to play for that given ball, rather than being bored of not playing a shot for a while and having to play it. And I think that was the case yesterday. I felt that he tried to take the hardest risk, the flashiest risk, rather than still try and hit it for 6, but try and take the risk which is a bit easier and is easier to be able to execute.
I know where you're going with that, you know, but I often say with some young batsmen, just as you speak to that, some guys in their own mind, what is high risk and what is low risk is a matter of opinion, isn't it?
It is a matter of opinion, and quite often it's a topic of conversation: high risk, medium risk, low risk. What's the situation of the game? What do I need to do at this particular time? And it's always a risk and reward. Like the thing with that Seifert shot, Baz, that we talked about, is that finally he was back. If he was up, well then you say it was actually on. It was a better option. So it's about playing the right shot at the right time. That was probably just the wrong time.
That's a good point too, because Glenn Phillips actually tried to play a reverse lap yesterday as well, and he didn't execute that one. And I was in the commentary box and you could hear sort of cries of no, 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 go out. And at the same time I thought, you know what, that is the right shot, because the third man was up. The bowlers had the wind behind him, so he was bowling, so he was trying to access behind him, so hit with the wind and try and go over the man who was up and try and hit the ball for 4 or 6. I actually think, although it looks a very, very difficult shot, it's not that bad a percentage shot, and it would have brought about a boundary if he was able to execute it, and it's probably a higher percentage shot than maybe some of the more traditional shots we've seen.
Well, some guys play it very well and they train it well, so it's not something that they haven't trained and practiced. It's a shot that they've probably done just as much as a square cut or an off drive, you know, and for a certain circumstance. I guess the challenge is just, there's some guys you see trying to play those shots and they're power players. And I believe that you should always play to your strengths. So for a power player, it's generally about hitting the ball in front of the wicket. That's where the power is, that's where, and quite often, and you're a good example because you played it well, you would play the ramp, beat 45, because then you knew the Yorker, that was really the only place you could hit the Yorker for 4 or 6, if it was the perfect Yorker. Because if you're trying to hit it in front of the wicket, it would hit the bottom of the bat, you get 1, there'd be no damage done. And then the bowler might pull a length back and all of a sudden you could go down ground. So you could use that power. So it's about manipulating the delivery as well, I think, to a degree, trying to get the delivery that you want. But quite often you see powerful players trying to just, and you just think, what a waste that is. Just stand there and whack it, use your power. It's a 65-metre boundary. If you get half of it in this day and age, the bats that the players have, it's going to go for 6. And you'd rather see them take that option on than a high-risk shot of a paddle or a reverse when that's not really their game.
It's a long way. I just want to remind our viewers that it's now, what, 8:55 p.m. local time, 5 to 9. And in order to have, as the rain continues to spit here, 9:48. If we start by 9:48, we can have a 5 over a side contest. So just over 50 minutes from now. So we'll be keeping our fingers crossed that these guys will want to get out on the park and get a result. But it's really damp here. So we'll take a short break. Really intrigued by this conversation with Craig McMillan, Baz McCallum. Why can't that go away? Well, we'll go away for a short while and come back. Back here at the Bay Oval, not the site that you would have wanted, having set aside time in your evening. Where the rains came in some time ago, 25 for 1, the West Indies having been asked to bat 2.2 overs. And then this is where we are since that time. But we've had a number of commentators, former players, former captains. There's one of New Zealand's former captains, Jeff Crow, the match referee, observing one of his officials. Another 48 minutes for us to get a 5-over game in at worst. Let's hear a little bit more from a current player this time, Jimmy Neesham, talking to Sonia.
This is frustrating, isn't it, Jimmy? How do you guys cope with the stop-start nature of these games?
Yeah, it's tough, obviously, getting out there and bowling it over and a half and then having to come off again. Obviously, with the warm-ups and stuff that go on, you cool down again pretty quickly. So, yeah, I suppose it's just a case of trying to stay switched on mentally and be ready to go if and when required.
Absolutely. And tell me, what's your assessment of the series so far?
Yeah, obviously very pleased to be up 2-0. I think West Indies are obviously a really good T20 team, so to come over after a long layoff and get 2 on the bounce straight away is pretty pleasing. But I think as a batting unit, we've done really well. I think it'd be fair to say as a bowling unit, we've got some things we'd like to work on. But as I said before, a long layoff and a bit of rust, it's always good to get a couple of wins.
Yeah, and it's a long summer ahead. We're looking forward to it. What are you looking forward to most?
Playing in front of crowds again, to be honest. Being at the IPL in front of about 15 people, mostly donning security vests, was obviously something different. But yeah, it's just been great to get out in front of the crowd again. And we've got a packed summer, as you mentioned, coming up. And I think not looking too far forward, but the Aussie T20 series is something I'm really looking forward to. And yeah, hopefully we can get in form ahead of that.
Absolutely, and hopefully we can get some play today. Thanks so much, Jimmy.
Exactly, thanks.
Jimmy Neesham talking to Sonia, and he's a character, Jimmy Neesham, because I listen to his voice and his voice sounds so low-key, and then you follow him on social media and it's a beast of a different color. He's got an opinion, strong opinions. But he talked there, one thing he said there was that he knows the West Indies are a very good T20 team, where the West Indians have been struggling batting-wise in recent years is getting test-classed batsmen of quality to score hundreds, big scores, even at first-class level. So you guys were talking and speaking to different things just now. Just share your views with that and some of the West Indian players in specific.
Well, I think some of the West Indies test players are actually outstanding test players. I think there's been periods of, and you'll be much more across this than the rest of us, Bish, but there's been periods where selections throughout West Indies cricket have not necessarily aligned with the best players, and I think that's stymied the development of some of these players and maybe even stymied their own self-confidence that it is just runs which is the currency that they'll be selected based on, and that's just the nature of, I guess, the amount of islands which make up the West Indies. And there's one player within the West Indies side which I think is an incredible talent, and he's had a very good career, but I still think his best years are in front of him, and that's Darren Bravo. First-hand experience with Darren Bravo, a number of years in the CPL, and I know it's a different form of game, but I've followed his career a lot, and he is just an incredible talent. He's got a beautiful technique when he's in full flow. Very successful here a couple of tours ago where he scored a double century to stave off a potential test win for New Zealand. He batted for a long period of time and he showed that fortitude which is required at test level, and he's a guy who, if he gets underway, then he'll certainly add a lot of spine to that batting lineup of the West Indies.
I mean, that lineup, Bish, and you'll know a lot more about those players. There are a lot of new names, a lot of new faces for the New Zealand viewers in terms of what we see on screen there. I mean, Jason Holder, obviously, everyone knows about, but Bravo is going to lead that batting lineup. Craig Braithwaite's just come off 240 odd for the West Indies against New Zealand A. So there's been quite a few runs scored by the side in their warm-up matches. I think one of the encouraging things is the ability for the team to play 2 or 3 warm-up matches before they head in to the Test series, because I think with scheduling, international scheduling, that's sort of been lost. Quite often you just go from series to series, and that will be one of the challenges for the T20 players who move into that Test squad is making that adjustment, like we talked about, that mental adjustment quickly within 2 days. But there's been a lot of first-class cricket played, so which helps in terms of getting your game in order, batting for long periods of time. Test cricket's different, it's 5 days. So it's about batting for a long period of time, putting big scores on the board. And I think in New Zealand especially, I don't know what you think, Baz, but I just believe that the first innings total is so important. I think in New Zealand, if you get a good score of 350 plus, with the way the conditions tend to be always bowler friendly, then it not only puts you in the game, it actually puts you ahead of the game. So that first innings total for both sides, I reckon, is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when you look at the bowling lineup of the West Indies side. If they can get enough runs and conditions are favourable, there is enough talent and ability within that West Indies bowling lineup to seriously challenge the home side, New Zealand. And it's going to come down to first innings runs. If they can just find a way to be able to post a sizable total, then they'll challenge New Zealand.
On that point, let's build on this even further, because you guys were saying, I think just before or just after we went to that commercial break, about guys like Andre Russell, who played one test match and has shown an inability, I suppose, an unwillingness to be able to be flexible in his game. There's a young kid we saw on the screen there just now, Nicholas Puran, who I rate, and I know you guys rate his potential. He's been selected to play in the West Indies A team a couple of games here in New Zealand during the test series. The challenges for him from a plethora of white ball cricket in recent times to now trying to get him to play long form cricket, what are the benefits and how challenging will that be for him to convert from T20s to the others? Anyone?
It is challenging. I think especially if you don't have a degree of first-class cricket behind you, because again, we're talking about knowing your game. And how you bat at test level is very different to T20 level, to one day. So it's a difficult one, because on our surfaces that offer a little bit for the bowler, sometimes the successful players have actually been the ones that have gone quite hard, because the nick goes over top of the slips. And so it's whether how long you can do that for and whether it's going to be successful and you trust it. But a player like Puran, all of a sudden he could get to 20 or 30 very quickly because of that aggressive style, and then the bowlers back off because all of a sudden runs are flowing. But I think it will take some time. He's a young player, he's finding his feet at the international level, but he's got the skill set to be successful in all three formats, without a doubt, and to score plenty of runs at test level for the West Indies, if given the opportunity and given the experience that he needs to do that.
I don't think he needs to look too far from home. If he casts his eye towards Jamaica, you can see a man who's been incredibly successful at being able to chop and change formats. He's been the best T20 player in the history of the game, and Chris Gale, and he scored 2 triple centuries. He's played over 100 tests, and he's carved out a quite incredible test record, and he's an example of how you can do it, how you can jump between the formats. David Warner is another one.
Right, so those two players, David Warner, Chris Gale, different groundings. David Warner started, I think, T20, converted to long form. Chris Gale had a great foundation in first class and then translated to T20 cricket. Nicholas Puran has not played a lot of first class cricket. For me as a bowler, I'm thinking that must be challenging to come that way.
I think there's less and less first-class cricket being played, so that grounding isn't the same that was in yesteryear. So it's very hard for players coming up to actually get the grounding in first-class cricket. So their grounding now is probably in T20 and one-day cricket. And so it's just working out what's best for them in terms of then red ball. And I don't know what you think, but I'm always a big believer that in red ball cricket, you need a solid defence. You actually have to be able to keep a good ball out. In T20 and one-day cricket, you hit a good ball for 4 or 6. You just whack it. In Test cricket, a good ball has to be either left or defended. And if you can't defend a good ball or make a good decision, you're not going to be very successful for very long.
The first thing I'll be doing, if you picked Nicholas Puran in your Test lineup, the first thing I'll be doing is having a conversation with him and saying you need to shift your defensive focus, your defensive line focus, from trying to lay the ball off to get one, as you do in T20 or one-day cricket, and focus on defending the ball back to where it's come from. You tighten up your defensive areas, you start playing with the full face of the bat, and you try and hit the ball back down the wicket, and you can then shore up your defence to a degree. You're never going to be a great defensive player, but you could shore it up enough, and then it's a matter of how you harness your strengths. He's got a wonderful pull shot. He drives the ball as well as what anyone does, and he can cut the ball nicely. There's 3 shots that he has in the locker. So if he can harness those and find a way to then keep out the good ball and then find a way to put the bowler under some pressure to start bowling in his areas, then he has the ability to, within the blink of an eye, he's on 30 or 40 in Test cricket. And we all know once you're on 30 or 40 in Test cricket, then the game becomes a lot easier because the bowlers are starting to bowl where you want them to bowl rather than you worried about what's coming at you. So I don't think it's beyond him if he wants it. If he doesn't want it, that's different. But if he wants it...
He wants it.
Well, if he wants it, then that's great. And if you say he wants it, Bish, I know how close you are with the Trinidad boys as well. And if he wants it, then it is all before him and he can go and get it.
It is tough, though. You have to say it's tough when they don't have that grounding. You know, it's really tough. I think that, you know, not doing the players a disservice in terms of the preparation that we give them, but certainly makes life very difficult when you're going from T20 to Test cricket within 2 days.
Yeah, it does, but you can't use that as an excuse. That's the way it is these days. So you need to accept that. You need to park any of those doubts or those side doors which you might want to head down and say, well, actually, I tried and it didn't really work out for me. I didn't get the preparation. I didn't have the grounding. There wasn't enough first-class cricket. Maybe the wickets aren't good enough. Didn't like that coach, etc. And say, this is what I want to achieve, and I am going to go over every single hurdle that I need to go and get what I want. And if he does that, he has the talent to be able to achieve it. And when opportunity knocks, if he's ready, then I believe he's someone that could step up and attain it.
And I know there must come a time when we have to cut this short, but just not just Nicholas Puran. Let's talk other players around the world who play a lot of T20 cricket and have to intermingle. Shipman Gills and those guys who are trying to cross format. I hear that they have to adapt, but what does it take to adapt? Because I've seen someone like a Shimron Hetmeyer play a lot of white ball cricket, and then suddenly a test match is upon you 4 days later, and he's saying to himself, I can see him talking to himself and say, leave the ball, and then the hands just go at the ball and he nicks it off behind because of a certain amount of muscle memory. What sort of training methods must take place in that short window to be able to adapt? Because you have to.
The first thing we always did after a T20 or one-day series, the next training, so it was always the first test training before a test match, it was a no consequence training. So as a batter, you're very hard on yourself if you play nick off or you get down on yourself. So it was one of those sessions where we said non-judgmental, just go in and bat, let those one-day shots come out. If you want to drive, you do whatever. You've got to get that out the system, to me, to a degree. So, and we're very judgmental as batters, full stop, about how we're going, what shots. So I always thought it was important for that first session to be non-judgmental, just go and bat, and we'll work out the game plan. The next session will be a bit tougher. We'll work it out what your game plan is, what areas you want to be hitting the ball, how you go about it. Because I think quite often players will come from white ball T20, and the first net session, if they nick off early after the first couple of overs are faced in a net session, then the net's gone. The mind's gone. So if you have that sort of session, we say, look, don't judge yourself, just go in and bat, and we'll see how it goes. Talk about it afterwards. And then you slowly bring it back into how you're going to bat in that test match. So by the time you've had another 2 sessions, you've got that sorted and you're ready to go.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Break time is upon us once again while we wait to get a decision. The rain is still coming down here at Bay Oval, so just a slight pause in our transmission and we'll come back to you with more information.
The umpires have just come out onto the ground and they've summoned the groundsman. I was having a chat to the groundsman a little bit earlier on, and he said it would take him about 45 minutes if it stopped raining to what they deem clean up the ground. So get all the water off the covers, sop it up to the point that they can start taking the covers off and then trying to dry the outfield as much as they can. Well, 40 minutes may be 40 minutes too long, because I do believe the cut-off time is about 10 o'clock. So if you can't get any cricket in at 10 o'clock, you might not get any in at all. So that's what that discussion will be about. How long is it going to take you if it stops now to get the covers off and dry the ground? So they've had that discussion. They're walking now with very little purpose back towards the pavilion. There's not much urgency there, is there? So good at being decisive on things like LBWs, caught behinds, but when it comes to making a call on the rain and whether you'll get back on, complete opposite, aren't they? The players actually keen to know what's going on. They know that a decision is about to come. I want to be glass half full about this, but the glass I put outside is overflowing with rainwater at the moment. So the umps will talk to the skippers. There's always a senior player too that always wants to stick their nose into the conversation. So what happens here is, I believe the captains, they get told the situation, and if both captains say, look, you know, no, we're happy to call it quits, then they would most likely call it quits. If one captain's holding on to hope, they might go a little bit longer. What you always do in this situation is, there you go. There you go. When you see the handshakes, you know that it's all over. And that is a real shame. And I feel really sorry for Mitchell Santner. Such a special occasion for Mitchell, and I think all the Santner family, really. His first game captaining his country at the international level has ended in a damp squid after just 2.2 overs. But he'll be pretty pleased because New Zealand has won the series 2-0. They had it in the bag before this game, but he also would have wanted to maybe get a W in his captaincy column. Jeet Patel, you're with me. I mean, you've done a fair amount of captaincy in your time. This would be a bit gut-wrenching, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think he would have been pretty excited to lead New Zealand out there today, and obviously to play at Bay Oval, which is one of his home grounds, being an ND player and all. But now 2-0 in the series, as you said, Rigger, New Zealand will be very happy with that. I think they've had two really good run-outs. The first game, they obviously got a bit of rust out of the way, and still ended up with a win there. But then last night with Glenn Phillips, or yesterday afternoon, sorry, Glenn Phillips getting his 100, and that commanding win that they showed yesterday means they can move on to the Test series positively.
Grant, you look at both sides. You look at the West Indies that come off the Caribbean League. A handful of New Zealanders coming off some T20 cricket as well. They both go into quarantine. They spend a couple of weeks not being able to do much, and yet the New Zealanders were just onto their game so much faster. What would you put that down to? Would you just put it down to the New Zealanders being at home?
I think historically New Zealand has always played well at home. We know these wickets. I think New Zealand wickets do bounce quite a lot. We saw that from the Eden Park trampoline game 1. but we're accustomed to these conditions, and especially there's not that threat of spin. I found playing in New Zealand, you never have that threat of, you know, a mystery spinner coming here and turning it square. So you don't have to worry about that. We've seen good surfaces, but I think the most promising thing for New Zealand in this series has been the depth of play that we've seen, especially in the batting ranks. But that variation in the team from Lockie Ferguson, he created for me that X factor between the two teams. When you've got someone that's bowling 150 Ks plus every pill, and he's got a pretty good slow ball to, you know, back that up with, as well as a you know, throat delivery. Those three variations are crucial in T20 cricket. But I think what we're seeing here with this generation of New Zealand players is that we're building depth, and for whatever reason that is, it looks very hopeful for the future and very bright. I think in the past, I think we've always been, you know, a couple of players short, especially in the bowling ranks. We think, oh, if we get one injury, we're struggling. But, you know, Trent Boult didn't play in this series. So we've got a real luxury of talent there.
I think if New Zealand, you sit back, and if you're Gary Stead, the New Zealand coach, you go, all right, T20 side did really well. They got on their game fast. They got into conditions which New Zealand actually revel in. I think these New Zealand sides now in New Zealand on wickets that have a bit of spice in them, they're used to playing on them, and they revel in them. They know how to play on them, and they're not fearful of them any longer. And you accept that the odd ball's going to fly around. You accept you're going to wear the odd one. But it's an acceptance. Once you accept that, then you can play in those conditions. And New Zealand was able to do that first and get ahead of the series in game one. And then they got into easier batting conditions, let's say, and took that confidence through. But the one thing that will stick in my mind for the two games that I've watched and looking forwards is that Lockie Ferguson continues to announce himself. He's bowling consistently at a high pace. And Devon Conway is a massive plus. Now, he walked into the international arena and looked like he'd been there for years. And I'm excited about those two players because they're not in the test team. And they're the type of cricketers you want trying to belt the door down for the New Zealand test team. Of course, we go into that. And so you'll now have players like Jameson who know, well, there's no easy ride. I've got people coming up behind me. You know, the older, more experienced heads like Tim Southey are thinking, well, I got to keep my form. I've got to still. There's not going to be an easy ride in the latter stages of my career, or it might be ended before I really want it to end. So you hope that demands a higher performance from them for another year, and then you've got people waiting in the wings who are hungry to play Test match cricket. And I can promise you that Conway he wants to play all forms, and I can promise you that Lockie Ferguson wants to play Test match cricket. So New Zealand not only gain a T20 victory, but I think they gain some excitement over the other forms as well coming from these two games.
And you mentioned Jameson. So Jameson and Conway, what I look back at, you know, when we used to play Jeets, and there's no doubt Test cricket's a huge jump up from domestic cricket, but Jameson and Conway came straight from domestic cricket and have looked at ease, and I think that that's very promising. You look at the depth that we've got, or New Zealand has got. I say we have to be impartial here. I have to learn how to do that. But New Zealand have that depth, but they're coming from domestic cricket, and there's something obviously working there. Whether it's the wickets were quite spicy at first class level, the start of the season, it's difficult for batters early on. Players are learning their trade there, and if they can make that jump quickly and not struggle, I think that's a huge positive for anyone's career if they can get off to a good start.
Yeah, and to follow on from that, you know, Lockie's come out and said that he wants to play Test cricket, and he knows that there's a stream of bowlers they need to go through first before Lockie gets another opportunity. So whenever he goes out into that pitch, he wants to impress. He wants to be amazing every time. He's said he wants to bowl fast. And I think if he does that time and time again, he'll knock that door down quite quickly, because we probably don't have the raw pace outside Waggy, Neil Wagner, for those that don't know. But, you know, he's the guy that's going to add that into that New Zealand team, and I think that will help them become a Test team that's going to be formidable.
Well, good news is that he's definitely in the running to be player of the series, along with, I'd say it's out of him or Phillips. And so that's a reason to hang around after the break to see who actually does win player of the season, don't you? Because after this commercial break, we'll be going down to Ian Bishop. He'll have the captains, he'll have the presentation, and we'll find out who was the player of the series. Well, the KFC T20 series between New Zealand and the West Indies has officially come to its damp conclusion. However, the New Zealanders will be very happy they've wrapped it up 2-0. Unfortunately, only 2.2 overs were able to be bowled here at the Bay Oval in Mount Maunganui. The West Indies batting first with 25 for 1. So let's head down to hear from the captains and, of course, find out who the player of the series will be with Ian Bishop.
It has been a well-deserved victory for New Zealand. It's not the type of end to the series that we would have anticipated or wanted, a damp end to it. But I think all the hard work New Zealand did earlier has paid dividends. In this presentation ceremony, we're going to go with the player of the series, the KFC player of the series, who is Lockie Ferguson, standing next to me, unmistakable. And he's going to be presented by Angela Blair with his token, check, and the trophy. New Zealand Marketing Director for KFC. Angela, thank you very much for your presence here tonight. Lockie, good series, you happy?
Yeah, very happy with how the boys played as a collective, I think. Obviously, the first two games, different people stood up at different times. Unfortunate tonight that rain played a bigger factor than the other two, but very happy with how our young boys played for sure.
Yeah, you're very selfie-facing there. I want to know about you in that 5-wicket haul in that first game as well. You're pleased with where your game is at?
Yeah, I think I just had a good day out, and that happens, and it's nice to run with those. But certainly, the tough work I've been doing all winter, and then a stint at the IPL sort of put me in good stead, I think, to come home and showcase my talents. And it's obviously exciting to get the wickets. But I think the way that the boys are gelling at the moment, and the way the young players are coming through and asking a lot of questions of some of the players who have been playing for a while, is fantastic, and only builds for a stronger team in the future.
I'm still going to get you to talk about you some more because oftentimes we hear about pace. What are your values in terms of the control that goes along with that extreme pace of 150 Ks?
I always think so, the 10,000 hours. I've been doing it for a while now, and I think a big part of that is staying on the park for long periods of time. If you're getting injuries coming on and off the park, it's very hard to sort of build the consistency. But fortunately, I've had a good run, and hopefully it continues. But I do put a lot of work in with accuracy. Of course, playing a lot of T20 helps, being put under the pressure at these different competitions. But it's exciting to come back home, play in front of home crowds, and express my talents and express the way I want to play the game. And it's an enjoyable team to play for.
A lot of young bowlers, potential bowlers, will be looking in. Lockie Ferguson, please tell me how I can generate more pace. Any tips?
If you want to bowl fast, you have to want to bowl fast and try to bowl fast every time, and I learnt that at a young age, and I went through a series of injuries, and of course I'm not saying that it's a good thing to get injured, but I think if you want to bowl quick, it takes a mental attitude to want to bowl that speed, and if you can get good coaches around you to help you harness that sort of power and that talent, then I think it's fantastic, and hopefully there are more fast bowlers to come through New Zealand, because you know, we get those fast cricket wickets like it was at Eden Park, and it is good fun bowling there.
And just finally, knowing when to bowl what, the change-ups, the off-cut of the back of the hand slow ball, then you go with raw pace. What determines that?
I think it's an experience thing. Over time, you start to get a bit of a gauge on players and where they're moving, and often where they look to hit you in the field. So certainly, my slow ball is a weapon, and I try to hold it back a little bit, expecting players to sort of read me to use it. And fortunately, it went well this comp. But yeah, even at Eden Park, I didn't use it that sort of whole game, and that's just because of the conditions. And I think it's important with experience. You need to learn what's working that day and just keep trying to hammer that.
From one former fast bowler to another, it's been enjoyable watching you and talking to you.
Cheers, Bish. Thanks very much, mate. Cheers.
Thank you very much to the KFC player of the series, Lockie Ferguson. Karen Pollard is here with us, the West Indies captain as well. If I may just spin you around just a little bit and get you onto that mark, Karen. Your thoughts on how this series went, frankly?
I'm obviously disappointed. As a unit, you know, didn't expect to be, played, this badly. Onus is on us, to try to, compete and, actually win the series. We didn't actually do that, which was, again, disappointed. So, something that we have to look at. And again, hopefully, the guys in the Test series can get something, out of the rest of their summer and their time here in New Zealand, and we get back to the Caribbean and try to revamp and come back again.
This is your second tour to New Zealand. I think if you go back a few years where West Indies have only won one T20 game here, and I think it was a super over or something. Why is it so hard to win here?
Again, obviously the conditions, are very different, to us, totally different from where we come from. And then not getting much opportunities as well, to practice, get acclimatized to the conditions, play as a team, have those sort of middle practice and things like that. So again, these are aspects that, tend to happen, but, over the past decade or so, we have come here as a team and not really done well. So it's something that, yes, we may have to look at. But again, I think it's more of sort of self-introspection as individuals and players, how we want to perform and how we want to be seen on the international stage.
And I have to be straight up, a lot of people in the Caribbean in particular, not exclusively, are going to say, well, Captain, leading the ship, you've got to find the right buttons to press. The disappointment, particularly from a bowling and fielding perspective, as I asked you, I think yesterday, is this a personnel thing? What will it take to change?
Again, from a feeling point of view, I think feeling is an attitude. You want to feel it, show the real mettle of a team. When you go out on the park, that's the only time you're actually 11 versus the 2 on the park. And again, if you don't show that sort of camaraderie and that sort of intent of wanting to do it despite the conditions, then you'll always look the way that we looked in that last game. So again, it's more of an attitudinal thing, and as individuals, we need to make a good look of ourselves in the mirror. Because, again, this is international cricket, as I said, and you don't want to be the laughing stock of the world. I definitely don't want to be the one and have these guys, feeling like the laughing stock in that dressing room. So, again, we had that serious sort of conversation about it, and we have an opportunity now to think about it and come back, because next year is a very, very crucial year for us as a team in terms of preparation, for that World Cup. And if guys will continue to, show that sort of attitude when it comes to that, some of us or some players might be missing the boat.
Thank you very much for your time, Karen, and all the best as you and the team go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to the West Indies captain, Kieran Pollard, and the man who's joined. I wouldn't call it a short straw, but Mitch Santner, who captained the team today in place of Tim Southey. Express on behalf of your guys how pleased New Zealand are to have wrapped this up.
As a whole, very happy with the way we went about our business. West Indies are a very tough side and have shown that, so to win 2-0 was very pleasing.
You didn't get out on the park today to fulfill your dreams and ambitions. Your reading or assessment of not being able to do it?
Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. I think, you know, I guess West Indies have come a long way. We had to do the quarantine and stuff, so to not get a full series in was a bit of a shame. But yeah, I think, you know, we can take a lot of positives out of, you know, the first two games. You know, different guys stepping up at different times, some young players showing as well. So, you know, it's very good signs for us going forward.
There were some special performances from a couple of players, batsmen in particular, Glenn Phillips.
Yeah, very good player. We've seen, you know, CPO and stuff like, and Super Smash back home. He's very destructive, and the way I guess he went about his business, you know, yesterday was world class. I think the way, you know, we continue to keep going, and you know, keep the foot down. The way I guess, you know, through the middle overs it can get quite a bit slow. You know, if you're trying to consolidate. So I think it's credit to the way we kind of batted at Eden Park as well. We kept going. You know, even if we lost a couple of wickets, we kept going and trying to, you know, get that run rate up. So it was very pleasing.
Conway as well played. But I wanted to get this question in earlier. This whole collaboration where you and many players are part of a CPL in the Caribbean, playing against all these guys you're very familiar. How much of an advantage was that, if any?
Yeah, I think it's massive. You know, a lot of time goes into scouting each player these days, you know, video footage. And, you know, I had a couple of the guys in my team at Barbados this year. So it was, you know, and I think obviously Glenn has shown he's played against these guys a lot, CPL, and had a pretty good read, I guess, on him yesterday in this series. So I think, you know, I guess the leagues around the world of you know, you're playing with different guys that you probably don't get to play with that often. So it's definitely good for the game.
All set up very well to head into World Cup year?
Yeah, it's obviously pleasing to win this. We have another big series against Pakistan. Yeah, I think we're obviously looking forward to the World Cup. So, you know, we might be playing different guys at different stages, but, you know, the way the younger players, I guess, stepped up this series was pleasing. You know, it shows a lot of depth in our T20 cricket.
All right, Angela, standing there once again with that trophy, which looks very heavy, the series-winning trophy, so we'll alleviate it from her. Congratulations to New Zealand. Thank you very much once again, Angela Blair, New Zealand Marketing Director for KFC. Very well played, Mitch, to you and your team.
Yeah, well played, New Zealand, and disappointing for Mitchell Santner not to actually get a full game in as New Zealand captain. But that's the end of the T20s, and we will move on now to 2 test matches against the West Indies. 2 test matches in wonderful locations in test grounds, Seddon Park in Hamilton, and then the Basin Reserve. New Zealand has a very settled test side. The West Indies have some big names and some new names, so it should be really exciting and interesting to watch. We'll be on air live on Spark Sport Thursday from 10:30 a.m. But until then, I say good night and good cricketing skills.
Coverage is brought to you by ANZ, major sponsor of the Black Caps.
Well played, Dougie.
That's 11111. Hey, bro.
You do it, you do it.
Nice and cozy.
This is my type of press conference. One guy.
Yeah. Sorry, sir. One sec. You stop. Towards me.
Oh, sponsors. How good. Come on, man. Who cares? Who cares, man?
Oh, we do.
Okay.
We get bed.
Good. Mitch, well, John just start us off with 2 overs as BLACKCAPS captain. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, a little bit short. No, it was obviously a great experience to captain. It was a shame we couldn't get out there for longer, but it is what it is, and nice to win the series.
Just in terms of the captaincy, like how much family was here that you sort of got to share the moment with?
Yeah, my parents and my girlfriend were here, so that was nice. Girlfriend told the family not to come tomorrow, and it turned out to be a cracker, so thought she'd invite them today. So yeah, it was nice to obviously share that with them. It was a shame we couldn't get out there for longer, but yeah, it was still good.
In terms of just how you'll remember it, I guess it's unique because it rained. Does that put a dampener on that for you at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's still a privilege. Obviously, it was a shame, you know, in terms of the series and you know the boys had travelled a long way to come and had to do the ISO, so to not get a full series was a bit of a shame. And obviously we'd have liked to win 3-0, but in saying that, you know, it was still a great series for us, and different guys standing up at different times, which was pleasing.
How much have you captained sides before, and I guess how much would it potentially be in your long-term aspirations as well?
Yeah, I guess it's always your dream, I guess, to captain your country. So in terms of that, it was, I guess, a dream come true. I haven't done a lot of captaincy, to be fair, but you know, I guess played a lot of T20 international games and been around a little bit. So it was nice in that regards. Yeah, so overall, I guess it was a great experience.
Ferguson's contribution recognised with Man of the Series honours. What have you made of his performance, and maybe how he's approached this series differently, if you've noticed anything in that regard?
Yeah, I guess, you know, we obviously know he's a world-class bowler and can bowl fast. So I guess that wicket at Eden Park certainly helped. You know, I guess with the rain around and a little bit extra bounce really, you know, to his favour, and for him to, I guess, turn the game like he did was very pleasing. So I mean, going forward, it's definitely great for us that someone can bowl that fast and with that control. You know, he's been working on a few variations at the IPL and stuff, so you know, that another string to his bow.
Some sad news today in regards to Ross Dykes. Did you know him at all? So what were your memories of him, and just general reaction to the passing of him?
Yeah, it's obviously very, very sad news. You know, he was a New Zealand legend. You know, played for a long time, was CEO, obviously selector and match referee. So, you know, we I guess everyone had a lot to do with him. So it was very sad to hear the news. And, you know, I guess our condolences from all the team to the family.
Test match mode, I guess, for you now. You head to Hamilton, I'm assuming, tomorrow. I mean, what are your expectations? Are you expecting to play the play a scanner at Super Bowl?
Yeah, I guess it's obviously wicket dependent. You know, we've seen in the past how it can be very green. New Zealand test matches here, and so I guess the focus, like you said now, is to switch, you know, pretty quickly into red ball. I guess it's been a bit of a strange, you know, year, so you're gonna have to deal with it and move on. So, you know, train tomorrow and the next day and wait and see, I guess, to see what the wicket looks like. And you know, it's good to have the 2 weeks isolation in Christchurch where we could train and do a bit of both, you know, red and white ball. So you know, we were lucky enough to do that.
How important is it for you in terms of your test career, though? You had the tough
Yeah, it's very important at the moment. I mean, you know, traditionally in New Zealand, the spinner doesn't bowl a lot. So I guess, you know, maybe second innings on day 4 and 5. So I guess my role is to get some runs and tie up an end. So you know, I'll be looking to do that if I get the opportunity, and I guess try cement that spot again. I guess they've put Powerade and water in front of me for a reason, or not. Yeah, I think KFC have you know, been lucky enough to give us a few pieces of chicken, so I'll be definitely cashing on that. Thank you.
Just one from me, Mitch, in terms of the T20 side, obviously play a lot of T20 cricket this summer. Next up is Pakistan, who's a team you've had some challenges with in the last couple of series. What does this series mean for the broader summer where there's a lot of T20 fixtures, in particular that next challenge?
Yeah, I mean, Pakistan are a very good side, we know that. And I think, you know, it was very pleasing to see guys like Conway getting a crack and stepping up, and guys like Glenn Phillips as well. So, you know, it definitely helps the depth of our T20 with the, I guess, the quick turnarounds of Test cricket into T20. So we might be, you know, guys might be having a rest after Test cricket and stuff like that. So, you know, these guys get their opportunity and taking it. So it's definitely good for us going forward.
Nice.
Short hour.
Great commitment, Michael. Great commitment.
Thanks. Mate, most the opportunity.
Absolutely. One-on-one sit-down press conference.
Truly unique.
Absolutely done. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Much appreciated. Drop over with the other set.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.
That's great.
Do you need anything else?
So I call it cricket.
There's a few smiles. Where are we at? Have you? Why are you playing it now?
Josie, is it just the meeting we want to take? Or you guys are going to play the match? Do you want us to take part in the match as well? Is the band for it yet? We can do both. We have an outlander with only 2 of us. And you want the Phillips as well?
We can't. Oh, we've got how many bags we got?
I've got mine, yours. I've only got one. You've got
I got 2, 3.
That should be right with 2 bat drops. Thanks, team.
Shot, bro.
See you
Thanks,
guys.
Michael.
Thanks very much.
Okay, let's take it.
We've got a whole bat. Are we taking anyone else?
I can give one to Robert. I can give the Phillips to Robert.
I'm just.
Nah, it's still zipped.
Oh.
I think it should be fine, Josie. Like, we don't have... Are we taking one in the back seat, Joe?
I'm just wondering if we've got anyone.
I'll give the player the match to someone else.
Okay.
Okay.
We can do that.
As that's not as urgent.
So we'll take Plinth. We'll take Plinth from this thing.
Yeah. I've got you the new Canadian wall.
Oh, is that Rock Factory fresh there? Oh.
Fresh there.
Is that for the
Best
test?
EXT you can get.
Yeah.
Oh, is that for the test?
Yes.
So this. Oh, so what's this? So this is done.
I can take that from you.
We'll take that. Okay. This is the Canadian wall, so we should start taking this one.
Yes. Yeah, you take. Oh no, yeah. One in there.
Good. The media brought to you by Parrot and Pump.
I just got the flood the trophies and stuff.
Come on there, Mitchie boy! Come on there, Mitchie boy! Keep going, Mitchie boy, keep going, Mitchie! Come on there, Mitchie boy! Unfortunately, a little bit of precipitation in the air, a bit of moisture. We're going to free up some time.
Great work.